Yeah. Oh, well, I guess I'm gray. We may have gray Kyle. Yep. Yep. Here I am. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of VR Download. In case you're new, each week we meet here in virtual reality using the latest technologies to discuss the next generation of personal computing. I am your bespectacle host today, Kyle Riesenbeck, filling in for Ian Hamilton, who usually has, an avatar because he's cool and I am not. Anyway, I'm here joined by my colleague David Heaney in our own very proprietary Upload Virtual Studios. We are broadcasting live on YouTube right now, so feel free to post comments and questions during the show. VR Download, if you're not aware, is also syndicated on all podcast platforms. And if you would like this type of quality programming to continue, we need your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing Upload content to the world. I'd also like to take the time to thank our UploadVR patrons for helping us expand our coverage. We have XR Developer News, Podum from Smash Drums, Holonet, Mike Manzano, and Richard Meller. Thank you, all of you, for being dedicated patrons to our site. It has been a while since I've been in here, David, and I'm feeling a little blue. No, gray, I guess. I don't know. How do I look? Yeah, no, this is bad. This is so bad.
Oh,
Gray.
wow. The dad jokes have already started, haven't they?
I
We're
know.
only a few seconds in. So yeah, we're really running into the limits of the last generation meta avatars. We're really trying to find time to upgrade those. It should be soon because, as any developers in the audience will know, they are deprecating these old avatars on March 28th, I think. It's somewhere near the end of this month. They will stop working completely according to Meta. And, I've spoken to some other developers that use these avatars, for example, Golf Plus, and there are other devs out there, and they've been having difficulties upgrading, and there are kind of teething issues there. So it's not all rosy on the other side as well. The grass isn't always quite greener, but hopefully Meta is going to bring in some last minute fixes to those new avatars over this month to help a lot of developers, including us, get upgraded. But on to what we're going to talk about today. We actually have quite a few topics. We have 13 in total. So some of them are just quick news that we're going to highlight and have some very brief discussion on, and others are ones we're going to get really deep into. So first, we'll just talk about the fact that PlayStation VR 2's price has now been cut to $400. They announced it last week. We talked about it last week, but it has actually happened now. PlayStation VR 2 is $400. We'll then have a brief Apple section where we talk about the launch of Apple's new Spatial Gallery platform on Vision Pro. It's a content platform from Apple. And we will talk about the fact that they announced a baseball Apple Immersive Video, coming in April at the Yankee Stadium. We'll then briefly talk about the fact that AMD's new graphics cards are here. You may think, that's not about VR, AR, but it's the graphics cards that really push PC VR forward. So we do like to just keep a little bit aware of that. We'll then have a discussion about some of Meta's research. We will talk about the Aria Gen 2 glasses, heavily misunderstood glasses, as we'll get into. People are really misconstruing what those are about. But they are research glasses, as we will discuss. Then we will talk about some of Meta's research towards photorealistic avatars. Usually Ian's favorite topic when he's here, but it's obviously a huge pillar of VR and AR to have photorealistic versions of other people that are driven in real time by headset sensors. And Meta has shown research on generating those from just 4 selfies. We'll talk about how significant that is compared to how much data and time it used to take to generate these kind of avatars. Then we'll have a main Meta section where we talk about a bunch of different Meta news. We'll talk about the fact that free-to-play apps now account for 70% of time spent on Quest. We will talk about Meta discontinuing Move, Quest's fitness tracking feature. We'll talk about the startup Inseye that has cancelled its Quest 2 and 3 eye tracking add-on that it was going to sell. We will talk about Meta's Unity and Unreal OpenXR SDKs blocking other PC VR headsets, which developers have got in touch with us to really be angry about in some cases. We'll talk about the Meta support page that suggests that Quest's pass-through API is imminent. That's going to have the opposite effect on developers. We're going to see a lot of developers build things that they could never build before. Some devs are really, really excited for that. And then to finish up that Meta section, we will talk about the Meta CTO's response to the leaked legendary misadventure memo, the one where he said that Horizon Worlds has to break out on mobile this year for anything to matter. And in his new response, he's actually kind of said that Meta is going to, quote, never give up. So we'll talk about that, and I'm sure there'll be quite a few takes from the audience there. Finally, we will talk about Samsung's headset. It's the headset that's set to introduce Android XR, Google's platform, to the world, and we now think we know what displays will be in it. Sony's new 4K Micro-OLED displays that are actually improved in some ways from the ones that are in Apple Vision Pro. So really quite a packed show today. That's a lot of topics.
And I have plenty of off color points to make, so feel free to anticipate some of my really bad dad jokes. Actually, this is a good show for me to be on because I think some of these topics, David, you and I can have a decent conversation over and not get too esoteric and dig into the nitty gritty. I got to ask though, do you currently have a PSVR 2? I
do, yeah.
Do you? Yeah.
Let's get straight into that. I really thought the off-color thing there was going to be another gray joke. I was worried. it never arrived. Yeah, I do. I've had one since launch. It's a good headset in some ways, right? And fundamentally, compared to standalone headsets, the graphical quality you get there is far beyond it, right? You really do have to stop and appreciate the fact that if you aren't someone who owns a gaming PC, you just want a consoleized experience. If you come home from a hard day at work, you don't want to mess around with drivers or settings or Steam VR bugs. You just want to plug something in and press play and go. Your options really are realistically in the US, Quest or PlayStation VR 2. And on the Quest side, sure, you get the standalone and wireless nature, but on PSVR 2, you get graphical fidelity that is far beyond that, right? We talked about this when Alien Rogue Incursion released, that there were so many issues with jitter and poor graphics on Quest, and then on PSVR 2, that game just looks excellent. And the problem with PSVR 2 has always really been its price, right? It's at $550, its launch price. It's more expensive than the console. And that's just such a hard sell to normal people. If you're not a VR enthusiast, for most people, like the PS5 is considered a big purchase. So if you then say, right, now you need to buy something more expensive than that for fewer games, most people just say no.
Yeah,
That's important that it's down to 400.
You say price, and that is really the word, but aren't we talking about value? I mean, it would have been different if the PSVR, just full disclosure, I never bought one. I've used one plenty of times. I've never bought one myself, despite having the console, the PS5. Where's the value in this headset? I mean, iteratively speaking, it's better than the PSVR, but at the time it came out and the amount of games that it had, the value wasn't there for me. $500-600 is just, So at 400 though, it doesn't change the value. It changed the price, but it doesn't change the value. Why do I want this headset? What specific thing can I only do in this headset that makes this valuable to me? And sure, it's a comfortable headset. It's a wide range of heads that it fits on. It's very comfortable. But where's the value? And I don't know if this is actually going to add to the sales or not, David. I'm not sure if it will.
Sure. So I actually think at launch, Sony did have a good content offering, right? You had Resident Evil 8, which is an incredible VR game that not enough people talk about, right? This isn't the games cast, and we'll talk about games on Tuesdays, but just talking about its value as a gaming machine, because this headset is pretty much fully focused on gaming. You had that. You had Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is a great fully made for VR experience. You had Gran Turismo 7. 3 titles, and what people I think expected, some of the people that thought 550 would be great value for them, was that Sony would keep following this up, right? That you would see more and more of Sony's IPs come in, and that just didn't happen. You got Capcom kind of holding things up with Resident Evil 4. Obviously, things like No Man's Sky are excellent, but you didn't see these Sony IPs come in. I think what's changed recently that does make this good value with the price cut and more content is that we've seen AAA cross-platform VR titles launch in the past few months, right? We've seen, as I talked about, Alien Rogue Incursion. We've seen Metro Awakening, a great Metro game. I played it. I liked it. We've seen Behemoth from Skydance, the Walking Dead Saints and Sinners developers made this RPG that takes that same idea of physics-based combat. I really enjoyed that game too. And soon this is going to get Hitman from IO Interactive, not the Quest port that was kind of real. So I do think this kind of combination of content that wasn't something Sony did anything for, it's just coming because it's coming to all of these VR platforms, does make this valuable. And I think, I don't think anyone's going to buy a PS5 for this still, but I think if you are a PS5 owner, it gets more valuable. And then we haven't even talked about what a commenter asked about here, which is the PC adapter, right? This now means that this is a good budget PC VR headset because the adapter is $60. You may need some extra cables. So for roughly $500, you can now get a headset that I think is, I mean, I wouldn't get this if you want to play room scale PC VR, but if you have a simulator and you just want a headset that you don't have to deal with Quest Link USB problems, you don't want to have to, you don't like wireless, you just want a high quality uncompressed signal, you put this thing in your racing or flight sim, and I think you're not going to be too disappointed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I went from playing devil's advocate to creating. David basically made a commercial for PSVR 2
which is funny because sometimes people, say, "Oh, Upload hates PlayStation VR 2. Why do you guys? Are you paid by Meta?" It's like, no, we just think our position is Sony just didn't fund enough content for this thing. I don't think anyone who's not completely delusional could deny that, right? Sony has not shipped a single. Well, they shipped one first-party title, Firewall Ultra, which was so bad that the studio closed down, right? So you could say, oh, well, that wasn't Sony's fault. They funded it, but fund more than one game, right? Where are all of your other titles? Think of all the IPs they have, right? From Ratchet & Clank to God of War to Uncharted to The Last of Us.
Astrobots. Ooh, too soon?
Yeah, that's the worst part, right? There are fantastic PlayStation VR 1 games that Sony has not bothered to port to this. That's the worst part of this. So we're not even asking them to go and build an entire new game. We're asking them to port it. It's PlayStation VR 2, in the extent that it has succeeded, has been in spite of Sony's post-launch content, not because of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I go buy a PSVR 2 if you want one. That's the pitch. It's cheaper now. There you go.
So Taddy P brings up a point that I think is very valid. Valve also hasn't funded many VR games, and no one says not to get their headset because of it. If you listen to VR Download, you'll know I actually do complain about this. I think it is ridiculous that Valve put out a $1,000 headset, promised 3 games. We all remember that. If you were back in the VR community back in those days, Valve said, we're making 3 full VR games. They released one a year later, Half-Life Alyx, excellent game, fantastic, but it's one game. And what have they released since? Has Valve released a single piece of VR content that's significant in the past 5 years? So, I think you can. But the difference there is, on PC, you get everything that came before. And there are modders as well. So, with PlayStation VR 2, Sony didn't have backwards compatibility. So, you only can get what was made for PlayStation VR 2. On PC, the index plays everything that came before and everything pretty much that came after. And then you have these modders who take flat screen AAA games on PC and add VR to them. And then you have UEVR, where you can even play around with some settings and turn any Unreal Engine game into a VR game yourself. So I don't think it's directly comparable in that sense. But I do agree with you. Valve should be funding games. Valve gets away with things that no other company would get away with. The fact that Valve doesn't ship VR games is a tragedy, right? You could imagine a parallel universe where Valve gives grants to developers of games that would work really well in VR. There's some Steam games I see and I'm like, wow, that would be great in VR. I think PC VR would be growing significantly more had Valve done that. But Valve has a, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, kind of libertarian stance here, where they think they just want to kind of leave the market as it is, let it grow, not artificially play with it and see what happens. I just think if you're talking about a completely nascent new technology like VR, that may not be the right approach.
Yeah, Valve does Valve confuses me sometimes because they could be the leaders. Like, I think that's kind of what you're getting at. They could be the leaders in this industry, and they're kind of taking a back seat, like occasionally poking their head out and making a comment or putting out some new headset. But I don't know. I would have liked to have seen the alternate reality where Valve goes whole hog into VR from the very beginning. That alternate world, that multiverse, give us that movie. You know.
Imagine Counter-Strike VR, imagine Left 4 Dead VR. All of these things could be, if Gabe Newell wants. People, the criticism of this argument that I see some people make is, oh, well, Valve's a smaller company than Meta or Apple. I'm sorry, but Valve's a multi-billion company, and Gabe Newell is a billionaire who reportedly owns multiple yachts. So maybe just one less yacht and a Left 4 Dead VR and a Counter-Strike VR, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. Obviously, it's his money. He can do what he wants with it, but we can also criticize what he does with it.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I think that ship has sailed, David.
Oh, there's the dad joke.
There's the dad joke. All right. Hey, you want to talk about some Apple stuff?
Yeah, let's get on to the Apple section of this discussion. I'm seeing some people in the comments saying we might not have to wait much longer for Valve's entry. That's true. We talked about that either last week or the week before about all of those rumors that Valve could be launching sometime this year. We'll have to see what their content lineup of that. Portal 2, a commenter here is pointing out, would also be a great IP. There are mods for that. Again, that's the great thing about PC is you get people modding these things to happen, even if they don't. But imagine a Portal game made for VR. You can imagine that. It's frustrating because you can see in like the lab and in Half-Life Alyx, Valve has some designers that understand virtual reality better than almost any developer. And I'm not putting down developers that are not Valve, but there are some ideas in Alyx in the lab that some developers today, most developers today, I mean to say, still haven't quite, gotten with.
I just feel like if they do Portal in VR like that, I'm going to jump through a window.
Well, that's the thing. I think they would reimagine it to work room scale. I don't think it would be full body portals. I think maybe it would be, your hand goes through a portal to grab something at the other side of the room, or you throw. Yeah, again, once you start thinking about this, Valve had a really good philosophy from the very start with the HTC Vive, where they kind of appreciated that room scale VR takes place in a physical room. And yes, you're in a virtual reality, but physically your body is in a room and your track controllers are in a room, and let's design around that. And I still think it's very rare to see developers that truly embrace that aspect of the medium today. And too much content is just take a flat screen idea and try to put a VR camera and pointing controllers in it. That's not greatness. Greatness comes from truly embracing the medium. And that's why I really want to see Valve bring something to this.
Absolutely. I agree.
So yeah, let's talk about that Apple news. It's only a couple of topics here. First one is that visionOS 2.4 Beta 2, so the second beta, brings Apple's new Spatial Gallery platform. So this is a new app on Vision Pro from Apple that is a curated collection of spatial photos, spatial videos, and panoramas. If you're not familiar, spatial photos and spatial videos, that's just Apple's marketing name for 3D photos and 3D videos that use their format. So these are, not 180 degree or 360. We're not talking about that. They are within rectangular bounds, but they are three-dimensional, so they appear to have depth. And so, Vision Pro can take spatial photos and videos. The newest and the last generation high-end iPhones can take spatial photos and spatial videos, but most people probably aren't going to have like super compelling content to watch here. So Apple has decided let's give you some from expert photographers and artists and productions. So Apple says this will have perspectives from famous photographers, stories from iconic brands including Cirque du Soleil, Red Bull, and Porsche, and behind-the-scenes moments from Apple TV originals like Disclaimer, Severance, and Shrinking, as well as special moments from top entertainment artists. So, this is a good app. I've tried it on the beta. It's cool because these still play beside, so you kind of almost get this like TikTok / Instagram Reels, but in the opposite direction, horizontal rather than vertical thing, where you're swiping through this horizontally, and you kind of get this carousel of content. And I'm interested to see what they do with it. Right now, this is a closed platform where Apple is putting on it, but is there a future where this is a sort of YouTube or TikTok like competitor from Apple? We'll have to see.
So I have, and I know I've shared it with you and I've shared it with other people on the team. I have recorded myself a fair amount of spatial video. I have the iPhone 15 Pro and I have recorded a bunch of it. But how do I share it? Like, how do I share it?
Yeah, that's a interesting question. Right now, you could share it over, iCloud or iMessage or something like that. But if you want to share it publicly, Vimeo is the answer. So Vimeo, last year, as we reported and talked about on the show, has added the ability to upload spatial videos directly from your iPhone. And then there's a Vision Pro app so that you can do so. What we're obviously waiting for is YouTube to do the same. You can convert it to a regular side-by-side 3D video and upload that to YouTube, but that's a little bit of an extra step that people don't want. So right now, Vimeo is the answer to that.
Yeah. Obviously, production of this type of video requires a special set of rules of how close you are to the subject, and you can take really bad spatial video, you can take really good spatial video. So I feel like this content has been heavily curated to give you the best experience possible, but know that there is such a thing as bad spatial video, and we'll start seeing that stuff once everybody starts sharing it out. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I don't think there's much else to say about this. So I guess we can talk about the next piece of Apple content here, if I can find it. So next month in April, they are releasing a new Apple Immersive video that is set in Yankee Stadium, Friday night baseball. So this isn't a full game. It's one of their kind of sports highlights things. And the game is from June 2024, last year, and it's a matchup between the New York Yankees and their longtime rivals, I'm told. I don't know anything about baseball, the Los Angeles Dodgers. So Apple says from the early morning prep scenes to tense nighttime finale, viewers will go far beyond the front row with an all-encompassing look at how elite athletes, diehard fans, dedicated staff, and epic moments make the Bronx ballpark legendary. And it's hosted by veteran sportscaster Joe Buck, who I guess if we have any US sport fans in the comments, you can tell me if that's a household name and you know who that is and if that matters.
Very funny, real quick, just a funny anecdote to share with everyone. So, David is in the UK, obviously. He puts in our team Slack. He says, who is this person? What does this matter? It's sports ball, American sports ball at that. What can you tell me? And Don, Ian, we had no idea because we're not sports ball people either. And so all the sports stuff, I first of all, I think this is a huge missed opportunity. And a long time ago, I said they need to stick a stereo 180 camera in 5 or 6 different chairs and just make the stream available for people. And I said that a decade ago. So the fact that they're just now kind of slowly poking, I know people have done stuff with sports, but it's just never worked. Brooklyn Dodgers. Yeah. It's funny when he said that, I was like, Los Angeles Dodgers. Yeah. Depending on where he got the information from, he could have come back with Brooklyn. That would have been funny, RG, there in the chat. So, okay. Sports, neat. Cool. Let's do it. Whatever.
Yeah, I think, as you say, while I'm sure some hardcore baseball fans will be like, this is cool. I'm getting a tour inside this stadium. I'm seeing the behind the scenes. For most people, what they want, as you say, is live sports, right? You don't want to watch a pre-produced video of some, sports game from last year. You want to be there in the front row, watching this same experience live. And as I always point out, on the Quest platform, they do have that for NBA games. 52 NBA games per season are free for any US Quest headset owner, but it's in 2D. It's a 2D 180-degree video. What Apple obviously has on Apple Immersive Video is 3D, and it's a lot higher resolution. It's 8K per eye, 90 frames per second, all the bells and whistles. It looks great. The problem is, can it be done live? And we don't know yet. All we've seen from Apple is this pre-produced stuff that takes months and months to make a 5-minute video. They did it with the Super Bowl highlights. They did it with an NBA All-Star game. Months later, you watch it as a highlight reel, and that's obviously that's not going to work. We've said this before, and we're going to say it again. Once they can do this live, right? Once they have high quality 3D, 180 degree, 8K per eye streams of sports, and you're right there in the front row like this, but not 2D and higher resolution, that sells Vision headsets, right? Maybe not the Vision Pro because it's $3,500, and yes, that's a ridiculous price. I agree with you, but when the Vision headsets start getting cheaper over time and lighter, $2,000, $1,500, $1,000, that's the kind of situation where if you are a fan of one of these sports, and if they do deliver that, and you can just sit there and be in the front row, that sells headsets. But when will it happen? We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it is a killer app for this platform, is to get, I grew up in a house where my dad was constantly watching sports. He is the type of person that would go back and rewatch a game, an event from a year ago. So it's not like that's completely unheard of to want to go back and watch. And Sports Center, man, I'll tell you what, there are people who just like live, breathe, sleep, die Sports Center nonstop. And so this is definitely an untapped area, a group of people who need this type of content for this industry to continue forward. Honestly, strongly agree. It brings in people who aren't traditionally going to be buying headsets for gaming, for example. And I've heard from people, people contact us all the time. I've heard from people who bought a Quest for this NBA experience, even though it's 2D, even though it's 4K per eye, or maybe even 4K overall. I'm not 100% sure. Even though it's not great quality and it's not 3D, there are people who say, I'm such a big basketball fan that I love this. And so you can imagine how this could be a lot more compelling once it actually gets good. So we'll keep a close eye on that over time. And yes, because sports is obviously a huge reason that people bought flat screen TVs for the first time and 4K TVs. And it's if you look at consumer studies, it's the reason that people upgraded to like 4K streaming services, for example, for sports. When they say, do you want to pay extra? The number one reason people buy all these things is for sports, believe it or not, whether it be all of these TV improvements. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see if that translates to headsets. Here in the chat, Arlen asks a question, but how many sports fanatics are also tech nerds on a Venn diagram? And the fun part about this industry is that going mainstream means that, in my opinion, my definition of mainstream is that grandma is comfortable with whatever the tech is. So, I remember when my grandmother got a touch, the touch screen phone, a smartphone, I was like, wow, okay, super mainstream. You don't have to be a tech nerd to understand this stuff once it iterates another step or two. I would argue that we're close now, but yeah, we're, people are understanding smart TVs now, and their understanding of tech has become a little bit more commonplace. So you don't have to be a tech nerd to enjoy your sports ball in VR, at least if not now, within a year or two. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that. Today's products that are used by tech nerds are tomorrow's products that are used by everyone. The internet was originally only used by tech nerds. There are so many cultural things today that were only ever used by quote unquote nerds, or watched or enjoyed by nerds. I mean, look at the trends over the past 50 years, right? Comic books used to be something in the realm of geeks or nerds or whatever you want to call it, and now they're the highest grossing box office movies. These are very different times, and things dramatically change. So let's talk about very briefly, just we don't want to go into a lot of detail about this, AMD's new graphics cards. So they have released the RX 9070 and 9070 XT, their latest generation cards. These are the first built on the RDNA 4 architecture, which is built on a 4 nanometer process down from 5 nanometer on RDNA 3. And AMD said that offers up to 40% better performance. Now, these are not designed to take on NVIDIA's super high-end cards, which if you look at the Steam hardware survey, most people don't buy. There's a lot of talk and hype and discussion about the 5090 and the 5080, but go again and look at the Steam hardware survey. That's actually not what people buy. People aren't buying these $2,000 GPUs at scale. You get some super PC gaming enthusiasts who do, but most PC gamers are on $500 GPUs, believe it or not. And that's what AMD is targeting with this. These two cards are competition for the 5070, NVIDIA's 5070 card, not its higher end ones. And these are priced at $550 and $600 respectively. So compared to NVIDIA's card, I'll bring up a chart here that we should have just for comparison, if I can find it. Yep. So compared to NVIDIA's card, they offer more VRAM, but it's slower VRAM. So with NVIDIA's 5070, you're getting 12 gigabytes of GDDR7. With AMD's card, you're getting 16 gigs of GDDR6, and otherwise they're somewhat comparable. So that's an interesting trade-off. The one thing I would note, is that for VR, so far, NVIDIA's encoders tend to be superior for streaming VR. If you're doing, virtual desktop, Quest Link, Steam Link, the NVIDIA's encoders do appear to give higher quality, less visible compression artifacts, but we haven't tested the new AMD cards. So it's possible, while AMD did not announce in their press release to us any improvements in the encoder, they may have made some behind-the-scenes improvements that change that. The other thing that I would note for wired native PC headsets that are using DisplayPort, just like the 50 series, AMD's new cards introduce DisplayPort 2.1a. And we'll talk later about 4K Micro-OLED displays of the kind that you're seeing in these new headsets. Shiftall's Megane X, Pimax Dream Air, Immersed Visor, Samsung's headset, Sony's headset. Notice that they're all 90 hertz. On PC, that may be because for most GPUs out there, you don't actually have enough DisplayPort bandwidth to do 4K per eye at 120 hertz. With this new DisplayPort 2.1a in the new graphics cards, we could see 120 hertz 4K per eye headsets. And good luck driving that, though, but we could see that come. Have a look in the comments here. Let us know if you're kind of interested in getting a new graphics card, if you're going to get NVIDIA or AMD. Guy Godin is in our comments, the developer of Virtual Desktop, and Guy is saying that AMD has fixed some issues they've had with their HEVC encoders with today's driver update. So it looks like they're improving that. But Guy, I'm curious to know, do you find in your experience that still the NVIDIA encoders in general tend to have superior quality for VR streaming? That's been my experience. Arlen is saying that a 5070 build is a build I can afford without my wife killing me and feeding my corpse to our cats. And again, that is, don't feel bad. Most people, if you look at the Steam hardware survey, are not buying the 5090. They're buying the 5070. And yes, Guy Godin, the developer of Virtual Desktop, is confirming in our comments, yes, that's correct. NVIDIA still has better image quality. So if you are deciding between NVIDIA and AMD, and you are using a Quest or a Pico headset that's doing PC VR streaming, we would recommend on that basis that you go with the NVIDIA option for now until AMD puts more effort into improving their encoders.
So should I, because I'm kind of desperate for a new video card here soon, which is going to cause me to have to upgrade everything else because there's not enough room in my case. Should I maybe, for the value of things, maybe go for a 4000 series NVIDIA? The prices on those will drop now and they'll be really affordable in their last year's version, right? So that's the way to go.
I don't think so. I think you're still going to want, again, if you're using it with like a Quest, you're going to want the better encoder. NVIDIA has said that they've made improvements to their encoder. Jack B is saying in the comments that 4000 series cards have actually skyrocketed. I think on balance, I think you're better to go for the newest one, especially as well of having the newer DisplayPort standard, so that, if you're going to get some 2026 PC VR headset that comes out that does 120 hertz 4K per eye, you could plug that in and have no issues. I think in general, you're going to want the latest architecture, even for efficiency, right? You're going to have for the same wattage better performance.
Very cool. Guy is also saying the price on the 4000 actually went up as they stopped making them. They are made on the same lines. See, now we know why. Looks like a few other people. Jack B also pointed out that it's skyrocketed. Isn't that weird? That is so funny that sometimes the tech world, just the prices do not follow what they're supposed to in every other industry. I don't understand it sometimes.
Yeah, I think unless we have any other comments here, folks, let us know what you're thinking about in terms of upgrading your graphics card. We'd love to hear from you. I think we are ready to go on to the next topic, which brings us into our meta research section of the discussion. So
yes.
just to
Now,
recap.
Yep. Before you jump into that real quick, I want to make sure everybody knows I bought on Black Friday last year. I got the deal on the Meta Ray-Ban Wayfarers. And so I have in my possession the Meta Ray-Ban Wayfarers with the lovely Kristen Bell doing the voice for me in my ear. And I did get the full prescription lenses, transitions, went for the whole kit and caboodle. And so I'm really excited, David. And yes, I'm being sarcastic here to lead you into this. I'm very excited about the Aria Gen 2 because that's going to be the next generation of the Wayfarer glasses, isn't it?
Yes. Thanks for baiting me into starting this, I guess. So that is indeed, as I referenced at the start of the show, the misleading way that some outlets and some influencers have referred to the glasses that we're about to talk about. So let's start with a really clear disclaimer that Meta's Project Aria glasses, which we're about to discuss, are not products, nor are they prototypes of future products. This is not a hardware platform that is being developed into a product, neither consumer nor enterprise. Let's get that out of the way. So let's say what these are. So the first generation of Project Aria glasses arrived in late 2020, around the same time as Quest 2. And they had a similar sensor suite to this. So you have a color camera, you had on it two wide-angle outward-facing grayscale cameras for world tracking, and then two inward-facing eye-tracking cameras. However, on Aria Gen 1, none of that was processed on device. They were not computers. They were literally wearable cameras. So all it did, Gen 1, is save all of these cameras to flash, right? Save their output as video, just as if it was like a body cam or something like that. And then you may ask, what's the purpose? So the purpose is that then researchers, be that for AR, AI, robotics, computer vision researchers in general, could use all of this rich first-person data that includes eye tracking to build computer vision models. So they have all of this information. They can feed all this data into these huge models that then they can use to improve computer vision. And so Meta's used this internally. There's been some other companies that have used this for computer vision research, and that's the purpose. So what's changed with Aria Gen 2, the glasses that they have just recently announced? Well, what's changed is that they can now process tracking on device. So that's the biggest change. There are some minor changes. They've added another tracking camera here. They have added open-ear speakers, so there's audio out now, and a heart rate sensor and an additional microphone so that it can determine the difference between your voice and other people's. But it's that onboard capability that is dramatically different. So this is a Meta-developed, highly efficient custom chip that is in this thing now, and that chip means that it can run simple applications on device. Those applications can leverage positional tracking, which you can do on device, eye tracking, and hand tracking. So this, as well as speech recognition. So this thing is, from a hardware perspective, not a product perspective, again, to be clear, but from a hardware perspective, it's as if you took the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, added real-time tracking, added eye tracking, added hand tracking. So you don't have any display here. There's no display. This is still just audio and cameras, but now these cameras are being used for tracking. It doesn't really make sense as a product because, in reality, if you were going to develop something like this, you would go and add displays on and go for AR. But it is, again, for computer vision research. So Meta's using this to test tracking models and they're actually, they started their own robotics division within Reality Labs that they're actually kind of using this data to, build up data for humanoid robotics. And just to kind of conclude on the specs here, they say that this highly efficient custom chip that they've developed allows for 6 to 8 hours of continuous use, and the whole thing weighs 75 grams, which is only 25 more than the Ray-Ban glasses. So very impressive piece of hardware, but not a product. And we'll discuss soon one of the really interesting research ventures that they're taking with these things.
It would be terrible for me to not address the comments right now. Guy wants to know, why is your aunt advertising Meta glasses? Jack B says, HR lady is recording your job interview. And Alien B1212 says, Mike Wazowski, which is very, like, I am actually thrilled to death that they had somebody other than, a fat, smelly neckbeard wearing the glasses for the picture. You know what I mean? Like, I'm always represented. I need other people to be represented here. And so when my Aunt Karen shows up with the glasses, yes, I do have an Aunt Karen, and yes, she sort of looks like that. That is good, because this is good for the industry to see people that aren't, your typical sweaty nerds. I'm sorry I called everybody in the chat out. I'm sorry. And myself, I'm very sweaty right now.
Yeah, so I think some of the commenters here are perhaps going to feel bad when they figure out who this lady actually is. So one of the first external partner that Meta is working with for Aria Gen 2 is a company called Envision. And they develop technology that's a smartphone app, and they also customize Google glasses. This is their day-to-day business, to help vision impaired people, so that's people with low vision, and blind people navigate the world. So their app or their glasses, you click a button on the Google glasses, or you press a button in the app, and then if you're blind or low vision, it uses the camera to tell you what's in front of you using computer vision and AI. So this is something that helps a lot of people who are vision impaired navigate daily life. So the experiment that they're doing here is that they're using Aria Gen 2's built-in world tracking and spatial audio to experiment with helping blind people navigate indoor environments by using a spatial audio beacon. So this woman is someone who is visually impaired and is testing these glasses out in a supermarket scenario. So here's how it works. She walks into the supermarket and she says, help me find the apples. She will then hear, because these glasses are referencing a positional tracking map that has been made of the supermarket, she'll then hear a spatial beacon coming from the position of the apples. So there are two speakers in this. Spatial audio with head-related transfer functions, HRTFs, is a well-understood technology now. So it really sounds as if it's coming from the other side of the store down the aisle. And it's so precise, this spatial audio. You'll have experienced it in VR games that use the highest quality spatial audio, where it really sounds like that audio is coming from that position. Well, this is like that, but you're not looking in a virtual environment, it's the real world. So this woman is hearing a spatial beacon from across the supermarket, just using speakers on these glasses, because spatial audio is so good now, to guide her to the apples. And then, she can get there and say, which one of these is the kind of apple I want, and then pick it up. And then she can say, because this is all with the Meta AI assistant, it's been expanded for this research study, take me to the checkout. And then the spatial beacon audio pinging noise, just like a beep, 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 will guide them over to the checkout. So I do think, obviously the commenters didn't know that before saying so, but this woman is someone who is, I think, legally blind, and using this as part of an experiment to see how could smart glasses significantly help vision impaired people navigate the world.
Over the years of being in this industry, I have met numerous people with, vision deficiencies, folks that have strabismus, and, they don't get to see stereo well. They don't get to do this. People who are legally blind. I gotta be honest. This technology has really changed a lot of people's lives, and it was unintentional, but it was awesome that it happened. What a happy accident. And I'm very happy to see this type of practical application to make lives better, and not just create levels of entertainment, that it can actually improve people's lives. So that makes a wonderful thing. David, did we just get a bunch of memberships? What's going on here in the chat?
So Fmeister94 has gifted 5 UploadVR YouTube memberships to some members of the chat. So
wow.
Q Creator was gifted a membership, Steve Fractals was gifted a membership, and Jonas Sandstedt was gifted a membership. Yo-Yo was gifted a membership. And It's Free VR Real Estate was gifted a membership, all by FMeister94. So thanks a lot, FMeister94. We really appreciate you doing that. That's great.
That is awesome. Thanks. Building the community. It's so fantastic. I love it. And the F in FMeister stands for fun. I agree. Probably doesn't, but that's cool too. Awesome. So so this is great. I mean, this is not ready for prime time. It's not coming to my Meta Wayfarers, but this little test bed that they have is going to slowly create new features that they can move over into production line products. But you got to have this kind of, it's like sandbox with lenses, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So right now, the Ray-Ban Meta glasses obviously have a much thinner stem than this and a smaller battery, and they use like an off-the-shelf Qualcomm chip, and they don't do much processing on board. The vast majority of tasks on the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the product, are offloaded to your phone. But over time, you can imagine that as the compute on board expands, as the cameras get better, you could imagine that maybe 3 to 5 years time from now, you could run a task like this on the Ray-Ban Meta glasses and do this kind of navigation. Perhaps even earlier if they could do a more basic version of this. We'll have to really see this. It's an interesting application. What there is right now on the Ray-Ban Meta glasses today is a service called Be My Eyes. And what they do is you have a video call with them. If you're not aware, on the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, you can video call people where they will see your first-person perspective, and you'll obviously see nothing because there's no display, but you'll hear them. And so if you're a blind person, you can use Be My Eyes to go on a video call from the Ray-Ban Meta glasses to a person who's volunteering to help, and then they will actually help guide you around from that first-person video call. So smart glasses have enormous potential to help people with vision impairments, and over time, we'll have to see if this rolls out into products.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very cool to see products like this. I worked with some deaf folks where we had a TTY service where basically an intermediary was having the conversation with me, but typing to the other person. So this, the fact that these things can be incorporated into this hardware is, oh man, people's lives are going to be so much better. I love it.
Yeah, and as you say, the other obviously main type of sensory impairment that if you're deaf would be greatly enhanced by smart glasses with heads-up displays, like we expect to launch later this year from the likes of Meta, or eventual AR glasses, because then what you can do is subtitles, right? Even if people are speaking to you, even if you aren't experiencing lip reading, the glasses will be able to do real-time speech to text and superimpose subtitles under them. So all of these categories of smart glasses, be it ones that don't have displays, be it ones that do have displays, are going to help people who have sensory impairments in all kinds of ways. And it'll be very interesting to see. As Jack B points out, the Be My Eyes thing I'm talking about, where you're using a video call, is a huge battery killer. That's a huge problem with glasses. These have tiny batteries for obvious reasons. Yeah. And that's going to be a huge issue. As Ian always talks about, and Ian hopes that they added the ability to plug the glasses into a battery bank in your pocket. That's something that Ian really hopes would happen, and that would really help with that, of course.
The way that these Meta Wayfarers charge, there's just a little sensors right under the bridge of your nose. It's like the absolute worst, but it fits so nicely into the case. So I understand the design, but if they could just put a port on the back, I could have just looped a line down my back into my pocket, something. I mean, I streamed from them the other day onto Facebook, and it just ate my battery. It just completely ate my battery. So yeah, that is a challenge still. And I'm going to say something I don't say a lot. So put this on record. I agree with Ian that that's something that needs to happen.
Everyone clip that, get that recorded.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with Ian too, actually, for enthusiasts in particular. That's going to be meaningful because sure, over time, the chips getting more efficient at doing this is going to help, right? Especially if they can introduce some of the Meta custom silicon that they've shown in Aria and in the Orion prototype into real products. But nothing's going to beat just having more battery power, and the ability to charge and use at the same time is a huge difference. One thing that some people are doing, that are kind of enthusiasts with this product, is just get two pairs. And so you constantly swap them between the case, because if you're not aware, the case for the Ray-Ban Meta glasses is a battery, just like your AirPods case is a battery. So if you have one pair in charging and then you just constantly swap them, you never run out of battery until the case runs out of battery.
That's what I do with all of my Corvettes too, is when one runs out of gas, I just put it back into the 12-car garage and pull another one. David thinks we're all made of money, everyone.
Yeah, that's
like,
a very
just
good
buy
point.
2 sets, no big deal. Let's get 6 of them. No worry. No, I know it is. It'll come down. I mean, this is the cost, literally, of being an early adopter on stuff. It just is.
CJ7 is joking in the comments. You could just buy 12 and get a whole day and then charge them all night. Yeah, just one for every hour, of course. Yes, one. Yeah. Just a Lamborghini for every season, of course. That's the suggestion. Okay, let's talk about the next piece of Meta research news, and that's some of the newest research towards photorealistic avatars. It is one of the core pillars of this technology that doesn't exist yet on Meta headsets, the ability to not appear as cartoons like we are now, but to appear as a photorealistic version of your authentic self, face and eye tracked. And this is something that Meta has been researching heavily for more than 6 years now, both the generation and animation of photorealistic avatars. Its highest quality version that you may have seen in the past actually crosses the uncanny valley. And we can say that because our Ian Hamilton has tried it. We're not just believing him on it. And he has reported that these things do, in fact, cross the uncanny valley barrier. But that's the highest quality Meta codec avatars. There are different versions of codec avatars. Not all codec avatars are created equal. And those highest quality versions that we're referencing now, they take over 100 cameras to generate. You go into this giant capture array of over 100 cameras pointing at you. There is, I think, maybe days, if not hours, of post-processing that has to be done on that, on expensive GPUs. That's obviously not scalable. You're not going to go down to your local avatar scanning center just to get your, avatar scanned. So what Meta's been researching heavily in recent years is how to do this from a smartphone. How do you generate by just holding up your smartphone and building one? And so you may be aware that Meta does have research on doing that, and we've talked about it in the past. However, the problem with even that research is that it took 3 to 4 minutes of holding your phone up, right? Doing 65 different poses, so 65 different facial expressions while holding your phone up for 3 to 4 minutes. And then after that, it still took, I think we'll find some of this research before. Yes, this is the previous smartphone research. After that, it took multiple hours, 3 to 6 hours or so, of generation on a server with 4 high-end GPUs to generate. So you may say, they've already generated avatars with a smartphone, but 3 to 4 minutes plus multiple hours, that's not where they want to be. And so you kind of see this with some of that past research. Just for context, I'll bring up the photo I was trying to bring up at the start when I talk about their highest quality avatars. These are the ones that cross the uncanny valley, but these are the ones that take 100 cameras pointing at you to generate.
It's not fair, David, because even a normal picture doesn't get out of the uncanny valley of some people. Okay.
Who could these some people we're talking about?
I am going to say this. There's a lot of conversations in here and in the chat, and I want to very specifically. Where is it?
So hold on. Let's try to get to the news first, though, on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to cover the news first because we've got to put the context in, right? So this is still the background context. So you have these super high quality avatars that take crazy expensive rig to build. You have these smartphone avatars they had in the past that take 3 to 4 minutes and multiple hours. What's the new research that we're talking about today? What have Meta researchers now achieved with the latest technology? And the answer is that they can now generate a photorealistic avatar head with just 4 smartphone selfies and a processing time of a couple of minutes. So yes, 4 selfies. Click, 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 click. Wait a couple of minutes while it generates, and you have an animatable photorealistic avatar head. So you may be wondering, Are we ready to go? Is this codec avatars about to launch? There are some caveats. So first, I'll just outline the kind of technical basis of this. This builds on the concept of a large reconstruction model, an LRM, leveraging transformers, the same kind of architecture that large language models use. So it's taking that same concept that powers everything from ChatGPT to Gemini to Grok to Meta AI and applying this in a visual sense. And these are sometimes called vision transformers or VITs. So this vision transformer is used to predict a set of 3D Gaussians akin to the Gaussian splatting you may have heard about in the context of photorealistic scenes. Vario Teleport, Meta Horizon Hyperscape, Gracia, Scanaverse from Niantic. So you get the technical aspect here. They're using the same transformers that power large language models to generate the same Gaussian splat kind of things that power those photorealistic scenes. However, here's the caveat. Here's why it's not rolling out to your Quest, tomorrow. The trade-off they've made here is that it's very hard to drive. So in real time, this runs at 8 frames per second on an RTX 3090. So this particular research has solved the generation problem, but it has not solved the driving in a real-time problem. And this is kind of the trade-off here, right? So we're still waiting for all of this to arrive in one piece. And any year now, it'll happen. They're getting closer and closer. They used to say, there are 10 miracles we have to achieve to get this, and then it was 5 miracles, and now I think the last we heard was 3 miracles. So it's going to be significant when this happens. It's going to be very, very significant when you can put on a $500 headset and have a conversation with someone's photorealistic head, and then in future their photorealistic body, because this is going to generate the kind of social presence, the feeling of being in the same room with someone else that today you can only get in real life and that no telecommunications technology can achieve. And as Ian said, we're talking about Ian a lot today despite not being here, full body codec avatars of the kind that you see in this research, the eventual goal that we think they're going to get to at some point in the 2030s. That is the killer app for VR and AR for most people.
It always helps to unmute yourself when you're going to talk. Jack B put in the comments earlier about that this is a community splitter. This is if this is one of the miracles, but I'm content with being a Squidward avatar in VR chat, and I don't really care about photorealism. How is this a miracle that needs to be performed when some people don't really care? And the answer to that is, and trust me, I understand the irony of this gray, lifeless avatar talking about avatars, but I don't care. I know that this is important, but I don't care about the uncanny valley. Talking to any SpongeBob character in any animated world, in any social VR experience, you're not worrying about the uncanny valley. The entire valley, everything is uncanny. Okay. It's like the X-Men. This, and also somebody else made the comment that the avatar has the 3 instead of the E. It's 4 pictures. Why not 4? I agree. That seems like a missed opportunity. But anyway, this is good enough right here. Like even at 8 frames per second, I've watched videos at less than that to consume content. I don't really, I'm okay with good enough. I've always been okay with good enough in this industry. This is good enough, but it's still, they're going to keep iterating on this. So even though this is just a stopgap and we're going to see iterations on this is a lot of effort put into something that and I know this is not a popular opinion, but I don't think that this needs to be done in order for us to succeed. I know it's unpopular.
Yeah, look, if you're someone who enjoys VR chat or Rec Room or the likes, communicating with strangers over the internet, as you say, SpongeBob or whatever character you want to be, this may not matter to you, but I think this does matter to 2 classes of people. First, as Afrobadger brings up, is enterprise, right? Meta really tried to pitch the Quest Pro and Horizon Workrooms as a tool for companies to communicate, to have a virtual boardroom meeting. And there are some real advantages to even that, even with these basic cartoon avatars. spatial audio being the main one, right? You can have a conversation with 15 people that doesn't just become everyone talking over each other like you would get on Zoom, unless you kind of do this really artificial mute and unmute yourself. You can't have a natural conversation like a real boardroom on Zoom. It doesn't work. But you can in VR, because each person's voice is coming from a particular spatial location. So you can have a conversation with a large group of people without being there in person in a way that no other technology can. So even cartoon avatars can do that. But of course, the Achilles heel is, as Afrobadger points out, no serious company wants to have a meeting appearing as cartoons that look like this, right? It's not appropriate. But if you do have photorealistic avatars, if you did look like this, you could absolutely imagine, instead of spending $50,000 on plane tickets to get everyone into the same physical room for a meeting, you put on your headset that you issued for $500 or $1,000 to each board member or executive or middle manager, and have a virtual boardroom meeting. So for companies, that's huge. The other class is regular people who just want to use technology to communicate with others. That's the primary use case of technology for most people. Most people spend most of their time on their smartphone on iMessage, WhatsApp, other kind of, sending people memes on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Social communication is the primary usage of technology for normies. So if you want to communicate with your family today and they're on the other side of the world, or even if they're 50 miles away and you don't have the time or money to, go and see them, you've had a long day of work, you just want to have a video call. That's your limitation today. You're seeing them on a little rectangle in your hand, or maybe you have a big rectangle on a computer, but it's still just a 2D rectangular view of them. It's not the same thing as having a shared sense of space where you could play cards, you could watch TV together, because this is a 3D object with positional audio, like you might in big screen today with primitive cartoon avatars. The ability to hang out with people remotely and see them as their authentic selves is itself a killer app for normies, because video calls suck. Okay, they really do compared to real life. There's this massive, massive gulf between hanging out with someone in person, which is always going to be the best way. This isn't about replacing that. It's about replacing the time where today you're on a FaceTime with them, or you're on a Zoom call, or whatever you want to use, or you're having a disembodied video game while you have a audio conversation. There needs to be something between that, something that's much, much better than today's telecommunication technologies, that's closer to real life. And that's what Codec Avatars promises to do.
You mentioned that there's this big gulf in between, these two different types of avatar. Is it the gulf of VR? Is that what we're going to call it? Do we need to change all the maps? Is it too soon to make that joke? I'm sorry.
Oh, can't get politically.
I can assure you that I am not a cat. Everybody remembers that poor man with the cat overlay on his video in a Zoom call. Yeah, I mean, it might just be a thing forever and ever that people just have a hard time with their avatars. I don't know.
I mean, look, so you see the comment here from Jack B saying, at least a FaceTime call from my mom wouldn't look like a hostage video. But the thing is, that's why I keep saying these high quality codec avatars pass the uncanny valley. So this is Lex Friedman. If you're not familiar with it, he's a podcaster, and he did this interview with Mark Zuckerberg just as Quest 3 released. They did this on Quest Pros connected to high-end PC VR. It's a research system. It's not shipping, but the point is that they crossed this barrier. And so for the first 5 minutes of this interview, Lex Friedman, who's usually relatively calm and collected, some people would even say to a fault, a little bit too monotone, was just sitting there going, holy shit, it looks like you're sitting in front of me. Whoa, this is crazy. It looks like you're sitting in front of me. And this is the thing, right? Our brain, our subconscious has this thing called social presence, where you accept that there is a person in front of you. Sometimes you'll get it triggered by accident if you're in a closed store and there's a mannequin in your peripheral vision, and for a second your brain will categorize that mannequin as a person. Do you ever feel that feeling in a store? That's a feeling that you will never get in a video call, no matter what. It's been proven. There's been research done on this. No video call will ever give you the feeling of social presence, but a mannequin can. And so in the same sense, this is what codec avatars do. Your brain literally says there is a human being standing in front of me, or sitting in front of me. And so that, obviously this is just a head, the darkness, kind of masks that, but that's the magic here. And so, people saying, what would I use this for? I would prefer a video call. No, you wouldn't. I've tried a less advanced version of this, slightly less advanced, And even this, I was like, wow, the genuine feeling that there's someone there. That's a technology that will revolutionize what it means to communicate with someone remotely. And I know there are skeptics about this, but I am, based on what I've tried, based on what I've heard from multiple people that have tried the high end version of this, I think you're going to be remarkably surprised when you do eventually try this.
So TMS just put in the chat. Also, who wants their avatars stolen? Now, if Ian was here, that would be a conversation that would be had, conversation. But I'm not gonna bite that one, David, because that's an Ian topic.
I mean, that is something that has been thought about. Apple obviously has their spatial personas, which is it's the same concept, but it's not the same fidelity. It's still very impressive, but it's not to the same fidelity. Meta, it also in their research, they talk about the fact that this system would be architected so that you cannot. And one of the ways they do that on Apple, and one of the ways that Meta is exploring this, is that on their system, at least, this would be gated behind your iris. So if you're not familiar, Apple Vision Pro has Optic ID. It scans your iris the same way that you use Touch ID or Face ID. So you can't use someone else's avatar. You cannot wear someone else's avatar in production in the system that they're developing. Obviously, can third-party apps be developed that are based on other people? Sure, of course. But if you're talking about like the system level spatial personas on Apple or codec avatars on Meta, the companies will not be letting you embody someone else's avatar.
We hope.
Well, that's what they both said. And I mean, on Vision Pro, you can't. Unless you put the headset on and unlock it and then move it to someone else's head really, really quickly, it doesn't let you.
I can't wait. Hacking on some of these devices is going to be so crazy in a few years. The stuff that they're going to have to hack. So fun. Wow, we really talked a lot about the avatars, and I know that's a hot point. And I may have said things to invoke conversation. My personal opinion on what avatar I use. I mean, I'm literally sitting here listening to David talk about mannequins, and I'm feeling very called out right now because I look like a mannequin. So I don't know. Is the conversation with the gray blob feel different than my typical snarky looking avatar?
So for me, I'm actually seeing your avatar. It's an issue on the PC side. It's on because of how it works. They actually serve these old Meta avatars from like two different endpoints for PC and Android, and it's the PC endpoint that seems to be breaking down. As in fairness, they have new avatars. They've shifted over to those, and we need to upgrade those soon. But I see you as your good old virtual Kyle self.
Well, good. I'm glad somebody is seeing me. I like me for me, so that's good. What's next?
Yeah, let's talk about the kind of Meta product section. That was the research section. We talked about things that none of the things we talked about are getting launched any couple of seconds, a couple of days, sorry, I should say. Now we're going to talk about the stuff that either is coming very soon or already has arrived. And the first story we're going to talk about is kind of a trend. And this is, I'm sure, going to raise some opinions from people. And that Meta has revealed that 70% of the time that people spend in a Quest headset now is in free-to-play apps. So not paid apps where you pay to download them and install them. These are apps that you can download for free, but that doesn't mean they're completely free. They're obviously apps that you have in-app payments or kind of optional subscriptions in some cases. And that's the company says people are now spending 70% of their time in that. So a little bit of context I want to add here. Meta obviously responded to our report earlier this year that we called From Quest to Horizon, where we highlighted some of the changing winds in the Meta Quest ecosystem, some of the developers that are feeling hard done by there, some of the kind of big dramatic changes that have been going on. And Meta released a response to that, and they said, we talked about this a month ago, that they don't think free-to-play will replace premium apps. Both models are likely to exist, but they do say that the overall industry of entertainment is changing. Free-to-play is not just more common on Quest. It's happening on Steam. It's happening on mobile. It already happened on mobile years ago. And even in the console space now, you're seeing a move from these kind of AAA Leviathans that we all kind of grew up with now being kind of changed to this freemium model. And, you can look on Steam, right? Look at the top games on Steam, Dota, Counter-Strike, etc. A lot of these things are free to play. So the interesting kind of context there is that Meta said that last year in 2024, the total payment volume on the platform, so that's in-app payments and paid apps, rose by 12%. And they said that, this was mostly driven by in-app purchases. So it's not actually that people are spending less money. It's that they are spending less money up front and spending more money after they get the game. So they want to play the game, try it out, and then some people want to buy, in-app cosmetics, in-app upgrades, all the kind of things that developers offer in-app payments for. And if you look at Gorilla Tag, right, it's free to play on Quest. It's the most popular app out there. They've done over 100 million in revenue on Quest from these in-app payments. So, some people say, like, I just want to kind of provide the balance here. Well, I'm sure people are going to point out in the comments the disadvantages of this and the kind of downsides of this. But we do have to point out that it's not that people are spending less money. They are still spending just as much money, in fact, more money. It's not in the same way.
I can't remember the last time my kid came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to buy this game on the Quest." And she uses her headset, But you know what she does come to me all the time and ask for? Robux. This is I just, as a parent, my child is asking for money, real money to be spent on fake stuff in a game. And I try really hard to go, okay, I would have done that. I would have bought a skin. I would have bought an upgrade, an upgraded weapon or whatever. But because it's my kid, I feel like there's not as much value to it. I'm like that. This generation, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, whatever they are right now, they want to play a game for free, play it with their friends, and then their friend gets a new shirt for their avatar, so they want it, and then they want shoes to go with the shirt. They want to spend money in a fake world. That's the path to success. If you're a developer right now, as much as it pains me to say it, you got to make a free game with in-app purchases to be successful. And now I will sit back and let everybody berate me for that comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that all developers have to, but I think more developers need to consider this path. It's very, very clear that unless you're making some sort of blockbuster that can compete with the likes of Batman, Arkham Shadow, that can compete with the likes of Metro Awakening, Arizona Sunshine 2, those are the blockbusters that people are willing to spend dozens of dollars on. But I don't know if you're going to make a game from a small indie studio or a one-person studio. Are you going to be able to necessarily be successful on the Quest Store, at least, by charging for an upfront product? As you say, we've heard of multiple developers in the past year who have switched from upfront payment to free to play with cosmetics and other upgrades or whatever you want to do. And some of them, again, these are only the ones that I've spoken to, they're saying they make more money from this now. So you actually may end up making more money by making your game free, which for kind of people who are older than the current generation of teens and people who have been around the gaming industry for a long time can feel very counterintuitive and can feel very strange. But whatever your view on this, whether you like it or you hate it, you can't really tell consumers what to do, right? That's how capitalism works at the end of the day. People are going to spend their money where they spend their money, and you can try and complain about them and say that they should be spending the money in a different way or on different things. But if you're a business, which most game developers consider themselves, some are doing it purely out of passion and they have a day job and this is just, they want to drive their own vision. But most developers, this is a business. And if you want to be a business at the end of the day, you have to follow where the consumers are going. And these trends make very clear where the consumers are going.
The most I've spent on a video game in the last year, well, I know it's only March, but I bought Civ 7 because I am a huge fan of the Civ games, and I spent $60 on a game that I've already played 6 times, and it is mediocre at best. Graphics be damned. Mechanics wise, it's very discombobulated. But why did I pay for this game and why did I play this? Because number one, they've got me hooked. I'm a fan of every Civ in iteration, but also because I was told there was going to be a VR port to it. And I want to be prepared to be able to take a game I know and love and play it in a new platform that I also know and love. That is the first time I've paid full price for a game that was not work related, that I did it for myself, but it still was even work related. I don't find myself buying a lot of games anymore, David. And I know I'm older and I'm an outlier, but are things trending like differently? Like, what, are we not the target audience anymore for some of these games? What is happening here?
Yeah, I think you do see a change in demographic. Meta has openly admitted it that, they reduced the minimum age for Quest from 13 to 10 when they released Quest 3. So that's obviously got an impact there. You do obviously get, teens are the most interested in this because they have the most free time. We all have jobs and lives that mean we don't get as much time to play VR. But I think if you look at like who are the people that are spending premium content, because again, I want to be clear, there still are premium games out there. Like I said, I keep reeling them off. Metro Awakening, Behemoth, Alien Rogue Incursion, Batman Arkham Shadow, unless you got it free with your Quest 3S. All of these games exist. Arizona Sunshine 2 and Civilization 7, right? There are developers launching paid games. It's not like this doesn't happen. It's just, it's just that if you are an indie developer, maybe that's not the best strategy anymore, especially if you want to get a large audience. Arcane Age, Chrome Colossus is pointing out there. Yeah. So there's a comment here. I think a few people have asked this. Are we talking about the delisting of Toast Interactive's games here?
Yeah.
So to be clear, we have two podcasts. This is the VR Download, where we talk about industry trends and hardware and technology. And then we have the Gamescast on Tuesday. We're going to leave that one to the Gamescast. It's more of a game developer thing. The other thing is we don't have the full story there. We still don't know. Maybe that's changed since we went live. I don't have, I'm focusing on having this conversation with you. So if this has changed in the past hour, forgive me. But we don't know yet what was the actual reason behind that. So before we make conclusions about that, we're going to have to see like what actually happened there. All we know for now is Toast has given a statement. You can read that statement on UploadVR.com. Their app is being delisted. They say that this is unilateral from Meta. Meta has put a notice on their store page that says, this app is out of compliance. That's what we know for now. We'll have to see how that story develops.
Yeah, I have to imagine there's pieces of this story that we don't have yet. So, like good, responsible, professional journalists, we will get the whole story and not focus on the sensationalism of it. But yeah, it is important to keep the show's themes separate. I mean, we are talking about industry news here, and then the Gamescast talks about all the game, which you could make the argument they're related, but we keep them separate. And then we'll have another show eventually here where I can just complain and be opinionated. So look for that coming soon. David, I think we kind of maybe killed the free to play. Should we move on to the next topic?
Oh, wow. The dad jokes just keep coming. They just keep coming. So Kyle has just used the word move there because the next thing we're going to talk about is Move. So Meta has announced that it is deleting, removing, getting rid of, whatever you want to say, Quest's fitness tracking feature called Move at the end of this month. So fitness is a big use case of Quest headsets. It's a breakout, unexpected use case of Quest headsets. Supernatural, FitXR, you have dedicated apps like that. You also have people using Beat Saber and Pistol Whip as fitness apps. There are a lot of VR games that just by their nature are fitness apps. There's some shooters that are fitness apps by just how much you're moving around, except for these newfangled shooters where you press B to crouch instead of physically crouching. I'm an old timer in that sense of VR. I play shooters where you crouch to crouch, but let's not get into that debate. The point is, Meta's getting rid of this system, so you'll no longer be able to track your calories and your move minutes by app and by everything. You're going to have to just wear a Fitbit or an Apple Watch and hope that that's accurate from now on. They are getting rid of the feature. This feature is quite old. It was released alongside Quest 2. In recent years, they added the ability to sync it to Apple Health and to Android's Health Connect. So they put a lot of effort into it and getting all that to work with your phone and integrate into your existing systems. and they're getting rid of it. And they kind of give this vague explanation that it was built on old technology and getting rid of it will help them enhance the Quest experience. But we don't know whether that means that they're making a new one in future or if they just think this isn't worth it. Not enough people care about this.
Why do I feel like it's something really stupid like the accelerometer or whatever? Whatever Mojo makes move work is breaking something else, so they have to get rid, or it's hindering their ability to move forward with something else. That's typically how these things happen.
Yeah, it could just be a general reduced focus as well. This comes like a month after they announced that they're getting rid of the achievement system. So they're getting rid of the achievement system. They're getting rid of the fitness system. I guess they're not technically getting rid of the achievement system. You still get a notification. It's just there's nowhere to actually view your achievements anymore. But with this, they're just getting rid of the system. So yeah, we'll see if they rebuild it. It could just be that this is part of their general progression to turn Quest into a profitable business eventually. Obviously, it's nowhere near profitable today, but year by year, they may be wanting to kind of focus on less and less things, refine what do people really use these headsets for? What do they really care about? Let's just kind of focus this in to something that is more lean as a business and more kind of viable. Little Scampy is pointing out that it wasn't accurate at all. That could also be a reason.
Yeah, it was not. Yeah, no, I know for a fact it was not accurate. So, I mean, I'm sure some people like just the general approximation, but I'll stick with my Apple Watch, which really isn't that accurate either, but whatever.
Jorg is bringing up a good theory, which I find quite compelling. At Meta, it is most likely that whatever product manager was invested in moved on to a different job. Unfortunately, a lot of these decisions are like that. It really is just like some kid came in straight out of college and built it, and then until typical Silicon Valley style, 18 months later, moved on to another tech company, and now nobody cares anymore because the incentives in these companies are to build new things, not maintain and improve old things. You don't get, super duper promotions and bonuses for making this 5% better. You get that for launching a whole new shiny thing that someone else can then go and abandon 18 months from now. Unfortunately, that is a story of Meta over and over again.
Yep, move fast and abandon things. Is that
yes, unfortunately. There are so many things, like we've seen Meta over the years launch a feature, get rid of the feature, realize a few years later that it was a good idea, launch it again, then break it again, and now kind of, rebuild it. It really is, people like to imagine that there's some like overall arcing strategy behind all these decisions, and it's all about a game of chess. Sometimes it's just about human beings having egos and projects and project internal meta politics and drama.
Right. Sometimes it's checkers, sometimes it's chess, sometimes it's Jenga.
Yep.
So, all right.
Yeah.
I know the next thing we're going to talk about is funny because I was just watching an old episode, and Ian still occasionally uses his Quest Pro, which has the eye and face tracking and all of that. So lead us into this, David.
Yeah, so a lot of Quest 2 and 3 enthusiasts were excited for this product. This company called Inseye, this startup, was making a product called Lumi, which was going to be a Quest 2 and 3 eye tracking add-on that they planned to sell for $160. So really the idea here was you just plug this thing straight in to your Quest 2 or 3 and kaboom, you get eye tracking that you can use on PC VR or with an SDK. And this is actually an interesting approach because this isn't camera-based eye tracking, this Inseye Lumi. They're actually using a novel approach to eye tracking where instead of, having these cameras where they just kind of process the position of the iris using computer vision, what they do here is they have an array of simple and inexpensive photo sensors instead. So it does still have IR illuminators like eye tracking. Any eye tracking headset, be it PlayStation VR 2 or Apple Vision Pro, you have IR lights illuminating your eye, and then you have IR cameras that are watching your eye. So this still has those lights, but instead of cameras, it has these photo sensors that measure the intensity of the reflection of that infrared light off your eye. So each part of your eye reflects infrared light with a slightly different intensity, and they can use a really small and efficient neural network to look at the intensities of these reflections and figure out the exact position of your eye at 1000 hertz while using 5 times less battery than cameras. So it's 10 times the update rate at 5 times less battery. Really, really promising technology. Would have been very interesting to see it in Quest headsets. But the startup says that it will now pause this indefinitely. They did take $1 refundable deposits for this back in June when they announced it. They say they will give you back your $1 if you email them. So if you really want your $1 back, you can get your $1 back, they claim. And that was going to give you a discounted price of $100 had they shipped. So you may ask, why? What's going on? Why are they pausing this, canceling this? They say that they're doing this because they're shifting their focus to integrate this promising technology into smart glasses and AR glasses rather than VR MR headsets. And as a startup with limited resources, it can't do both, at least not at the same time. So they say that they are working closely with companies who are preparing to bring next generation smart eyewear to the market, and they want to be the company to provide the eye tracking. Obviously, the fact that this is more compact than cameras and more power efficient makes it ideal for smart glasses. They finished their kind of statement on this by saying, please know this doesn't mean we're giving up on VR. We remain convinced VR has massive potential, and we plan to revisit our VR projects when the time and resources are right.
Do we think that this company is going to get bought by somebody, absorbed? I mean, right? Like they're putting pause on a product. It's possible that they could get scooped up by somebody.
Yeah, I've said that since we saw this, that it really looks like this is promising enough that they could get acquired. However, what I wonder is, are they the only ones that have this? The reason that they wouldn't get acquired would be that Apple and Meta and Samsung and Google all have something like this working in the lab. And I actually wonder, could we see, is this how Quest 4 or Quest 4S get eye tracking? There are some disadvantages to this approach compared to cameras, right? One of them is that the precision isn't quite as good. So if you're doing gaze and pinch, like the Apple Vision Pro's interaction system, it's not going to be quite as accurate. So that is a difficult one there, but it might just be able to be solved with better technology over time. The other disadvantage is that you don't get things like eye blink as reliable, right? You can't really do blink tracking as reliably. So I don't think people hugely care about that. Some VR games use that on PlayStation VR 2, for example. But overall, it's not hugely important. I could see the cheaper Quest 4, Quest 4S using something like this. If not,
so I brought up the Quest Pro and Ian using the Quest Pro because I find myself not wanting, like not caring. I have the eye tracking turned off and the face tracking turned off on my Quest Pro because I really don't think it was great. It was just okay. It was pretty good, but I turned it off because I found myself constantly like having weird facial tics and I looked like I was having a stroke most of the time. How important is eye tracking? And I wonder if the trend of needing eye tracking helped this company decide that maybe we push pause. Maybe this isn't as important of a feature. So how important is face and eye tracking to this industry?
Oh, eye tracking is essential, right? So if you look at products like Apple Vision Pro, if you want to drive displays of that resolution, it's just highly impractical to do it 4K per eye by rendering raw pixels. You want to only render pixels where people are looking. This is foveated rendering. I'm sure most of our viewers are familiar with it. That's going to be an essential component of every headset eventually. At a certain resolution, it just doesn't make sense. At 2K, where Quest 3 is, the advantages of foveated rendering are meh, right? John Carmack famously argued that the same amount of energy and thermals that it would take to drive foveated rendering would be better used by just overclocking the GPU at 2K resolution. But once you get into 3K, 4K per eye, it becomes essential. It's just silly to have a 4K per eye headset without that. Now, that's only one use case. The other, of course, is the other two. One is social VR, so the ability to make true eye contact. We don't have eye tracking here. This is simulated eye tracking. You don't really know when I'm looking at you. You don't really know when I'm looking at my hands. That matters. The other one, of course, that we've seen introduced in Vision Pro is the gaze and pinch interaction system, which, if you haven't tried it, it is like telekinesis, the ability to just look at a UI element and pinch your finger, even when your fingers, at your lap, whatever. That's magical. It's so much easier to do basic interactions than having to reach your hands out or point remotely like this and use your kind of fingers or use controllers. If you want to just like put on your headset and launch up Netflix, I can do that so much easier on the Vision Pro than I can on Quest 3 because of gaze and pinch. And we know that every company is going to copy this. Samsung's headset that we'll talk about at the end, they're going to use eye tracking for gaze and pinch. Meta's headsets from Puffin in 2027 and likely Quest 4 in 2026 are going to use gaze and pinch. Everyone is going to use this. This is the default interaction for XR.
Basically, what I'm hearing then is that while this might have just been, I don't know, introduced sort of as a novelty, it's a problem that needs to be solved for later down the road. That's the value here, is that this is something that's going to be critical later. So we might not care about it now as a practical function, but it's solving problems down the road. Okay, I understand now.
Yeah, I mean, Meta didn't really do anything with it with Quest Pro. Quest Pro could have had a gaze and pinch interaction system, but they just didn't do it, right? Like people have built one using the Quest Pro. You can go and download some demo apps to do it. Just Meta didn't. We can talk about Quest Pro another time because we could talk about that for 10 minutes or 10 hours, to be honest. But Palmer Luckey criticized them for this. He said, like, you introduced a new feature set and didn't bring any content or software to actually leverage it, right? Like you could say Horizon Workrooms, but the avatars are so basic that like the face tracking doesn't really hugely matter. You kind of, and it wasn't good enough. Well, I'm sure Meta will introduce that in future products, but let's not rant about Quest Pro for now.
Yeah, right.
Let's talk about our next topic, which this is such a big show. I have to click so far back in my notes to actually find our next topic. Our next topic, wow, this is a controversial one.
Yeah, it is.
Wow, we have Guy Godin in our comments, who I know is very frustrated about this. So this is, developers are frustrated that Meta's Unity and Unreal OpenXR SDKs block other PC VR headsets. So this is kind of a difficult one to put all of the context into, because some of this is a little bit esoteric if you're not kind of really into the VR development space. So let's kind of break this down. This is going to take a little while. So OpenXR, the idea of it is that instead of having to use vendor-specific APIs, be that Meta's or Pico's or HTC's or anyone's, you can write one application per operating system, be that Android, Windows, whatever, and support any VR, AR headset. Support any headset, one set of code, not having to write like specific if blocks for every headset and do multiple different kind of vendor-specific code. That's the dream of OpenXR. That's what it's designed to do. And in theory, all of the big players, except for Apple and Sony on PS5, support it. So in theory, you write an Android OpenXR app, it runs on Quest, it runs on Pico, it runs on HTC Vive standalone headsets. Bing, it runs, right? Play for Dream, all of them. In theory, on PC, you have a Windows OpenXR application. It runs on Quest Link, it runs on Virtual Desktop, Steam Link, HTC Vive, Pimax, Vario, every PC VR headset in theory. In practice, it's a little bit more complicated because in between you have a game engine. And so Meta and Pico have their own integrations for game engines. And these, in theory, offer the best of both worlds. They're OpenXR compliant. So in theory, it runs on other headsets, but also gives you unique features of Quest or Pico or whatever the provider is, as well as like prefabs and templates and all of these helpers that make it easier for you to build a application. And so in theory, this all works. And on standalone, ostensibly, it kind of does. The problem is that on PC, Meta's integration for Unity and Unreal does not actually maintain OpenXR compliance. It will only run on Quest, Link, and Rift headsets. So Virtual Desktop's developer, who I don't know if he's still in the comments here, has had to kind of like work around this by doing hacks that bypass this system. Hacks may not be the right word, bypasses that figure this out to get OpenXR, to get Meta's integration for Unity and Unreal working with Virtual Desktop. Other PC VR headsets, you're going to kind of just be out of luck. So what developers do in this case is they implement the Meta solution, and then they have to go and write separate code using like Steam VR or Unity's built-in OpenXR integration. And so this is the whole point, was OpenXR wouldn't have to do this. The whole point is that you write once and deploy everywhere. And so Meta has basically kind of gone against this contract on PC. And one of the contributors to OpenXR, who has worked at a bunch of different tech companies, worked on PS4 and PSVR at PlayStation. He worked on Falcon 9 and Dragon at SpaceX. He works for Microsoft currently and worked on HoloLens and Windows MR and helped with OpenXR as a standard. He is so enraged by this that he has had his name removed from the OpenXR standard. And you can go to uploadvr.com and get links and quotes from his statement on this. And he's basically said that Meta has kind of gone so far against the promise of OpenXR on PC that he is outraged and doesn't want his name associated with the OpenXR standard anymore. And his argument is that OpenXR means nothing if these companies don't live up to it, and that the Kronos Group, the industry consortium that is behind this, it's the same consortium behind Vulkan and OpenGL, in case you are kind of a graphics programmer or someone familiar with that, a gamer, I guess. They have been asked by multiple developers now, take a stand against Meta, call them out, don't let Meta do this. And Kronos has released a statement that kind of just says, you know, we recommend using the built-in OpenXR support of Unity and Unreal, not the vendor integrations like Meta. And so that's kind of it's a lot weaker of a statement than some people wanted. And this developer was kind of against that. So this is difficult to sum up in a kind of podcast conversation. I hope I've explained it. If you're still confused, go to uploadvr.com and there's an article where we go into kind of a little bit more detail about this. But the point is, Meta claims that its plan over time is to support Unity's built-in OpenXR support and to sort of move away from its Meta OVR plugin that's part of their Unity integration. The problem is that their actions don't quite match that intention. We've still seen in recent months Meta add features only to their integration and not bring them to Unity as OpenXR extensions. So we're going to have to see what happens here. We're going to have to see in 2025, does Meta follow through on its word and truly get rid of these this approach? Because they, like, to be clear, they tell developers, if you're building a Quest app, you should use the Meta integration, the Meta XR Core SDK for Unity. That's what they tell developers to use. But if you use that, you cannot support other PC VR headsets unless you go in and write a whole separate block of code for that. So yeah, Geek Odin in our comments, again, the developer of Virtual Desktop, is saying this is an accurate representation. Thanks for bringing this up. And it would take Meta at most a week of work to fix. So to be clear, the OpenXR contributor I was talking about before, that guy who, you know, worked at SpaceX and PlayStation and Microsoft and is passionate about this, he is saying that his understanding of this on a technical level and his communications with Meta are suggesting that this is an intentional decision, and Meta, as Guy Godin is saying separately, could fix this if it wanted to and chooses not to. Again, full context on uploadvr.com.
Quick question. Is Apple supporting OpenXR?
No, Apple doesn't support OpenXR at all.
Okay. All right. So, quick question then on top of that. Do people feel the same way about Apple and Meta right now? Because it feels to me like what Meta is doing is trying to control, you know, somebody in the comments put, you know, are they trying to create a mode? Are they trying to do that? I feel like what they're trying to do is they're trying to control what they can control, which is what software runs on their hardware. It's their way of keeping it, you know, a closed system like that. Apple's been doing that for years. And don't get me wrong. I've been developing in this space for a long time, and I understand this. I'm just asking the objective question. How does this differ? What Meta is doing, how is that different from what Apple is doing?
Sure.
Or has been doing?
Apple, you could kind of say, let me think of a good analogy for this. Would you rather someone, you know, if you ask someone for help and they said, no, I'm not going to help you, would you rather that than someone saying they're going to help you and then kind of doing something that actually doesn't help you? So that the reality here is that Apple doesn't pretend to support OpenXR. They don't say that they support OpenXR, but Meta does, and it's made a lot of communication about how it says it's all in on OpenXR. That's a direct quote from Meta, that they are all in on OpenXR. And they tell you that what they have in this Unity integration is an OpenXR plugin. They call it OpenXR. They use this brand and name. This is the problem of the contributor that I was talking about, the guy that works at those companies. He said that the OpenXR standard doesn't mean anything. It's like if your food said fair trade on it, but it wasn't really fair trade, right? It's if Meta wants to just say, we're not going to support any other PC VR headset, okay, it has the right to do that, but don't call it an OpenXR integration then.
So this is not a problem of what Meta is doing. This is not a problem with what Meta is doing. It is a problem with what Meta is saying. If they're going to do a closed system like that, then tell us that that's what they're going to do. Be transparent about it. This feels like if Meta had just never said they were going to do anything OpenXR, then we would just be complaining that they're not doing OpenXR, but they have the right to do that because Apple has the right to do that. So I don't know. I might be looking at it a little cynically.
No, I understand what you're saying, but like Meta is not. It's like Meta is one of the founding members of the OpenXR consortium. The commenters are asking, are they a member? That's what makes this so weird and confusing. They were one of the spearheads. In fact, the OpenXR API is based off the Oculus SDK. There is a myth out there that it's based on Valve's OpenVR, the Steam VR API. That's actually not true. The fundamental structure of OpenXR was like an evolution of the Oculus SDK. So that's the really weird part here. And so, like, it's frustrating because this would be so easy for them to fix. And the evidence I've seen here, the evidence that I've seen, how do I put this? That this contributor of OpenXR has shown does suggest that this is something Meta is doing. Like they are blocking it out. And it's unclear why they're doing it because they don't seem to be doing this on standalone. It does look like for Android, their OpenXR implementation is compliant, but then on PC it isn't. So it's really perplexing of why they would do this. It doesn't seem to offer any benefit to them. It may not even be intentional, right? It may be that they just don't care. They just have zero care about fixing this, and they wouldn't assign an engineer for 2 weeks.
Are they trying to kill PCVR?
Well, no, other people's PCVR. Other people's
PCVR.
And I'm not saying they're doing that. I'm just saying that the effect of it is, it's not that they do that, right? Because it's not that any developer, or at least the vast majority of developers, actually just releases with this and it doesn't work on other headsets. What the effect of this is they just are being a pain in developers' butts. They're making developers do more work. They are making developers do more work. The whole point of OpenXR, it's not about like the consumer. It's actually not really. Like the consumer gets the end result of it in a sense. But the real like direct point of OpenXR is to make developers' lives easier. And this makes developers' lives harder.
Wow. Okay. Well, hey, developers, developers, but not really. That's that kind of sucks. I'm always reminded of that XKCD standards comic strip. If you're not familiar, go check that out. Just the idea of just creating open standards and a new standard, and new standards, like 100 of them out there. And which one do you choose? Oh, this one's going to cover all of them. Never works. Well,
almost everyone in theory supports OpenXR, right? Everyone except for Apple and Sony on PSVR 2 on PlayStation 5. On PSVR 2 on PC, you could argue it does support OpenXR, like not by any effort, by its nature that Steam VR is an OpenXR compliant runtime. But yeah, the only place that you can't use OpenXR is on a PlayStation 5 or Apple Vision Pro. Everywhere else you can use OpenXR for today. But yeah, I think we've talked enough about this, unless we want any other comments. I think we can move on to our next topic, which is, we've just talked about what's made developers angry. Now we're going to talk about what's making developers excited. We're going to go from negative stuff to some positive stuff. So this news is that a Meta support page indicates that Quest's Passthrough API is imminent. So this Meta support page mentions a new headset camera permission for Quest, which, according to the support page, allows an app to access the real-time pass-through camera feed from the front of your headset. So this isn't itself a revelation. Meta said at Connect back in September that this year, 2025, they would release pass-through API, giving developers the ability to use the camera feed from the front of your headset in their apps. And there's a lot they can do with that, right? So you may be a little bit confused here. Some people, you may say, wait a minute, we already have pass-through apps. Like there's mixed reality on Quest. So how that works today is that pass-through is a background that the app sets, but the app doesn't get access to it. On the actual application itself, it's as if they're rendering against a black background or a blank transparent background to be more accurate. And then the system fills in the background with pass-through. So developers are rendering all those virtual objects in your mixed reality game, but they're not actually seeing the real world. They do get the scene mesh that you generate. So they get that 3D mesh, they get your hand tracking data, they get all of these outputs that are generated by Meta's system using the camera, but they don't get the raw camera itself. They don't get the original. They just get the results. That's what's going to change with Passthrough API. So the support page gives suggestions of what developers might do with this. So developers can create apps that recognize and use specific objects within your real world environment. For example, a digital board game that incorporates physical game pieces or boards. Location recognition. Developers can create experiences that respond differently depending on where the camera feed shows you're located. For example, indoors versus outdoors, at a famous landmark, or in a specific type of room. Other machine learning functionality. Developers can run custom machine learning models against data from the real-time camera feed. This could be used for retexturing and shading the real world, games involving participants who are not wearing headsets, person or animal detection, any number of industrial training use cases. I said this on social media when we announced this story. This will be one of the most, if not the most, significant updates to the Quest SDK ever. This is going to dramatically change the utility of these headsets. They're going to go from, as I said, the mixed reality aspect being developers just overlaying stuff to developers actually augmenting your reality. This enables actual AR, computer vision models that do all kinds of crazy stuff. Ian has talked about in the past about wanting instruments, right? You could have, piano training that doesn't have to do manual alignment, that can actually see which keys you're pressing, guitar training. There are so many applications for this. And I think we could sit here and think of 10 ideas. And I promise you that once this comes out, VR and AR and MR developers, whatever you want to call them, are going to come up with 10 better ideas in the first week. This is one of those things where this is going to sound a little jargony, but I am excited to see the ingenuity of developers unlocked by this, because I think there are already developers that have good ideas. And once they play around with this, you're going to see some amazing apps that are just nothing like what's on Quest today.
David and I both, I have a feeling when we both read this, we both did the exact same thing. We both went, ooh, yay, this is going to be cool. I'm super excited about this. This is something that is, I think, critical for the movement ahead in terms of augmented reality content, mixed reality, whatever R you want to call it. But David's talking about how these amazing developers are going to come up with all these cool, ingenious things. What do we got to wait 6 months to a year before one of these apps ends up out? This is sort of a challenge to the dev community. Like, how long and before we actually start seeing these really cool, like, amazing apps that we're anticipating?
So I think for developers who already are doing this on smartphones, there are a lot of smartphone apps that are using computer vision in some interesting ways. They're going to be able to probably port this over pretty quickly. We could see some apps released in the first few weeks, in the first months. But to really take advantage of the possibility here, some of those crazy ideas like reskinning your environment and all kinds of things, some of these things are going to require time. Yeah, I think this is going to be the kind of trend this year. So last year, 2024, we saw developers start to take advantage of mixed reality in general, just, having your 3D scene mesh and doing cool stuff with it. This kind of advanced computer vision stuff, of custom computer vision models, that's what we're going to start to see developers take advantage with over the course of this year. But just like you could argue MR, mixed reality, is probably only going to hit its stride this year, this stuff is going to start hitting its stride in years to come. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. I mean, real-time object tracking is something I'm really excited to see if some devs can pull off, right?
3 months, David. I'm going to give it 3 months. On June 6th, we're going to come back and we're going to take a look at what 3 months has given us with this feature.
To be clear, this hasn't launched
it hasn't
yet.
Been implemented yet. Right. Yeah, okay. So all right. That's fair.
We have the Meta support page is talking about the permission for this. So to be clear, how this works is just like on your phone, you go into this app, you'll get a pop-up saying, do you allow this to access your headset cameras? Warning, this app will be able to see what you're looking at in your real room. Be careful. You hit allow, that app gets to use your camera. So that's all that we know, is that they're just about to launch the permission. Presumably that comes with the API. What they could be doing is, as they've done with many features in the past, there could be a bunch of developers that are already working with this, that are under NDAs. We know they did that with hand tracking, with mixed reality. It's very, very possible. Caesar asked the question, are they going to fix Passthrough on Meta Quest 3 because it's grainy? So they've made significant improvements to Quest 3's Passthrough since it launched. It's a lot better, but some things are hardware limits. And the graininess, that's to do with the aperture of the cameras, the size of the lens, those things are hardware issues. But what you need to understand is that the Passthrough in Quest 3 and 3S is essentially first generation consumer Passthrough. We expect it to be dramatically improved in Quest 4. In fact, I would say the biggest upgrade in Quest 4, if I had to guess, we don't know anything about Quest 4 yet, other than that it's supposed to come out in 2026, but I would guess that Passthrough will be the biggest improvement by far.
Man, I just want to call out here in the chat, Frank Jones, you are here. Our thoughts are with your family during your time right now, but glad that we can be here to offer distraction maybe. Okay, so here we are. We think that this is going to be amazing when it gets implemented. The Passthrough API. All right, so people are saying stuff like, all right, yeah, a lot of the Pokemon Go might get ported over quickly and all that stuff. I'll be really curious to see how this changes things. This could either be really awesome or it could just be another shot in the dark. We don't know. I had this little Ian devil popped up on my shoulder and said, you need to mention that there's like privacy issues, and you did say it, about the whole they can see in my room and be worried about that. But I mean, that's going to be a story we're going to have to write someday, David. It's like writing an obituary for a celebrity that hasn't died yet. We know we're going to have to write the article of, there's this developer who's storing all of your room pictures and stuff. I don't know. It's going to happen.
So, yeah, I mean, that's important to point out that the trade-off here is that there could be a privacy issue, right? That's historically been why these headsets don't let you do that. Apple Vision Pro doesn't. Android XR will on launch. It'll be the same system. A pop-up asks you if you give permission. But the reality is that if you have the ability to give developers permission to see your room, some developers will abuse that. That's reality. Just like on your smartphone, there are some apps that have abused their permissions on smartphones. So the way that Meta works around that, I guess, and all these companies, is that you will always know when an app is accessing your camera. It can't do it in the background. So you're in the app. It can't do it in the background or anything like that. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to say, if you want these features that this enables, you have to, by definition, give the application access to your cameras. Now, you can say no. No one's forcing you. No one's coming into your house and saying you have to use this app. You can just say no. It pops up and you can say deny. And maybe that means the app doesn't work, or maybe it works a lot less well. Maybe, on the idea of detecting a board game and using computer vision to get a physical board and then put virtual objects on top of it. That's something this will enable. Maybe you have to manually place the pieces. If you say no to the camera, you have to go place. Maybe that takes you 3 minutes, but maybe you say, I don't want to give this app permission. And that's the reality of the situation. And yeah, unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. Not everyone is a good person. And unfortunately, there probably will be at least one developer in the future of this technology that will abuse this permission.
And Ian would like to interview you if you do.
Yeah.
Okay. My battery on my headset is getting dangerously low, David. I'm plugged in, but we'll see how this works.
Yeah, let's move on to the next topic then, I guess. So
Yes.
this is our penultimate topic for those of us kind of wondering where are we in this show. We have two more topics, this one and then the Samsung headset. So this one is Meta CTO's response to that viral memo that was leaked where he was addressing all of Reality Labs staff. So context here, Andrew Bosworth, the CTO of Meta, in November sent out a memo to Reality Labs staff. Reality Labs being Meta's hardware and metaverse division, behind Quest, Ray-Ban, Horizon, etc., research and development of AR glasses, and now robotics too, funny enough. So in this memo, he said that 2025, this year, will determine whether it's the work of visionaries or a legendary misadventure. So Reality Labs, the work of visionaries or a legendary misadventure. And this memo leaked last month. So it was from November, but it leaked last month. And Bosworth in it also declared, and this is what really kind of got the community worried, I would say is the right word, that Horizon Worlds on mobile absolutely has to break out for our long-term plans to have a chance. So a lot of people interpreted this memo and this particular sentence as if Horizon Worlds on phones is not successful this year, Meta's going to give up on Quest. That's kind of the most negative way to read it. And that's how the people were genuinely concerned. People who make their livelihood in this industry, people who are, invested in the Quest ecosystem, have spent a lot of money, saw that and said, wow, this is concerning. So Bosworth has basically come out now and given a response to this, in which he says, essentially, I won't speak for him, but essentially he's kind of suggesting that the context of an internal memo where you are kind of rallying the troops is not exactly the same thing as like what is your specific exact position. So here's what he said. He said, social connection has always been the core of what we do, and owning the social substrate of whatever the next platform is, that's always going to be important. So I think we probably never give up. Never, never, never give up. He continues, one of the problems with reading these kind of internal documents is that you don't always get the full context. The context around it collapses. So he finishes by saying, for us, the context of that memo is that this is an exciting year. It really feels like a lot of things are breaking our way. He goes on to say that, just like Quest is being a success, they're also seeing Ray-Ban glasses being a success. And then here's the really, really interesting part, which kind of gives you a hint that this was bravado or whatever the right word is. It's kind of bluster to rile up the troops. Is this a make or break year? Well, sometimes they all are. And I really would wonder, we haven't seen his yearly memo leaked another year. How many times has he said this? How many times has he said this is the year it all has to work or it's all over? Get to work, folks. The context is so important here. I said this when this first was leaked. Don't read an internal memo of, think of a general in a battle 1,000 years ago running along the front of the troops, Braveheart style, saying, our enemy is ferocious, but we are better. We need, this is it. This battle is the most important in history. That's the kind of context of a memo like this.
Rallying the troops is so difficult. I gotta just say this right now. Andrew Bosworth, I like him. I think he's a fun personality. I think he's been a good addition to the Meta kind of hierarchy. Here's why I like him, because there are so many times where he could flip out. He is super chill about stuff like this. The way he presents himself, I really like. And I do feel bad for him because I know about this whole internal memo stuff. If you guys saw the stuff that I sent to the team, rallying the troops, man, it's difficult sometimes. So I understand and appreciate the unfortunate position he's in, but I guess it goes with the territory. You work for a company like Meta, and you're going to have leaks. You're going to have stuff that you're going to need to address. But at the same time, the whole idea of Horizon Worlds on mobile devices, just it's so, I don't know. It just puts a bad taste in my mouth. But to have everything hedged on the success of that, I get trying to put priority to it, but hedge the success, and I don't really think he means that. But saying it, you don't make a statement like that without there being some level of truth to it somewhere.
Yeah, so kind of two things there. Firstly, on Meta and Bosworth. Meta is both on purpose and accidentally one of the most open companies in the world. So they are one of the leakiest ships out there. They've recently, started investigating and firing leakers. I would point out to anyone that's shocked by that all companies fire leakers, and Apple, fires and sues leakers. So that's not unusual. But they also have quite an open culture, right? Where they have these all-hand meetings that most companies don't have of this scale, actually, that they are kind of open about things, or at least they were. They're kind of changing that. And also Bosworth does these monthly or so Ask Me Anything sessions on Instagram, where regular users of Quest and Ray-Ban and ask questions, and he responds to a dozen or so of them each time. And like, in Bosworth's defense, when is the last time you've seen an Apple executive do that? When's the last time you've seen a Valve executive do that? When's the last time you've seen, a PlayStation executive? These people might do interviews with press at times, but how often do they just take questions on social media and respond away, right? It's something that...
Does Valve even have executives? I've never even seen.
Yeah, it's also flat in Valve. Everyone's an executive.
Two other things I want to point out here. Never give up. He's asking to be rickrolled 1,000 times. Please send Bosworth a rickroll. Never give up link. He'll appreciate that. Also, legendary misadventure. Now, I stared at that term for quite a while, and I finally figured out it's his way of saying epic fail. Legendary misadventure is government speak for epic fail. So let's hope that that's not what we're going to end up with as an epic fail here.
Yeah, I think it's in reference to the close to $100 billion that Meta Reality Labs has now spent over the past decade on mostly AR glasses research. But yeah, to come back to the substance of this, Horizon Worlds on mobile is certainly a priority for them. They definitely are highly prioritized. They want to have a Fortnite or Roblox-like platform that has these user-generated worlds. You kind of have a very low cost of new content, right? You're not paying a AAA team to build something. People are building it for free, and then people are buying microtransactions on it. It's the ideal platform. Everyone in this industry wants to own the Fortnite or the Roblox or the Minecraft equivalent. And that's you can't build that to scale anytime soon without having it on mobile as well. So you can understand that position. Now, whether you think Horizon Worlds is ever going to be that, whether you think that's a good goal, that's separate to just talking about the analysis here of why this might be important to Meta. But, the thing just to finish the thought, the thing that's not going to happen here is, as the kind of doomers were suggesting, they're not going to be like, oh, well, Horizon Worlds hasn't worked, let's cancel Quest. That was kind of the narrative here. And the reason that doesn't make sense is like most of their biggest bets haven't even arrived yet. Like they haven't played their cards. They haven't even got, codec avatars, as we've talked about. They haven't got eye tracking to do a gaze and pinch interface. They haven't come out with like a lightweight headset designed for screens like they're apparently going to have in 2027. They haven't got, 4K per eye to make watching movies good. They haven't got 3D movies yet, right? They've partnered with Steven Spielberg to try and bring all these 3D TV and movies. All of these big bets have yet to arrive. And even Horizon Worlds is still very, very early, right? They've just switched over from having everything created in VR to getting rid of that and having it built by a desktop editor that's kind of like the Roblox editor or Unreal Engine for Fortnite, UAFN. They have their own kind of editor now. All of these, we're still really getting started. That's what I really want to highlight here. As a commenter's pointing out, we haven't even got the Horizon OS headsets, right? The Asus and Lenovo headsets. This is all still really early. And I say that a lot, and some people are like, what do you mean? Like, we're 10 years in, but we're only 6 years into standalone VR. Oculus Quest only launched 6 years ago. On the grand scheme of technology, that is nothing. Think of like where were personal computers 6 years after the first PC? Still irrelevant to the vast majority of people on the planet. And where are they today?
Oh yeah,
a computer in every home. Where was the
Right.
first PDA? People, again, I say this a lot, but people talk about the iPhone like it was the start of smartphones. And that's only really valid if you play a really careful definitional game. But what was an iPhone really? It's a pocket computer. It's a computer you carry around in your pocket. And that's a much older idea that started in the early 90s. And only 17 years later, in 2007, did you actually get a pocket computer that regular people wanted to use at scale. So we're still really early. This is a multi-decade play. Mark Zuckerberg has indicated over again to Meta investors that the returns for Reality Labs are expected in the 2030s. This is a long-term project. This is not something that Meta expected would start playing out in the early 2020s.
Horizon Worlds is trying to be Roblox. Roblox exists in VR right now. And I don't know a kid that plays it. I don't know a single kid that uses it. They all play it on their computer, but they're not doing Roblox in VR. Well, why not?
It is one of the most popular apps on Quest, right? Like you don't know people, that's kind of anecdotal, right? Like we do see it is one of the most popular apps. I wonder how many. I wonder how many kids bought a Quest because of that, right?
Right, but anecdotally, I have a dozen kids that I can pull from that all play Roblox, and not that I have a dozen kids that I know of. But I ask them, I'm like, why don't you play in VR? They just don't really want to.
Have they tried it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think Roblox is a particularly good VR game. I've tried it. I'm not the target market anyway, but it's not really a great VR experience. It kind of feels tacked on. That is arguably Horizon's advantage, that the VR support in it feels a lot better. And obviously Fortnite has absolutely no VR support of any kind, right? There's CJ7 saying my granddaughter plays Roblox in VR. So
yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's my youngest is, 14 now. I mean, maybe she's just past. Maybe it's more the 8 to 10-year-old. I don't know. I can't figure it out. So, all right. Well, Horizon Worlds, we'll keep an eye on you. See if you Roblox or not.
Yeah, with some commenters here saying that like it's not really optimized well for VR. And yeah, I strongly agree with that. I guess Meta's pitch for Horizon Worlds is it works better in VR. It loads instantly on web, right? Roblox doesn't work in a web browser. It works on, it's a program you download for your computer. And so they kind of hope that it will get to scale at time. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I mean, we talked last week or the week before, I can never remember which episode it was, about the Horizon desktop editor. That's going to completely change what Horizon Worlds is, right? Because again, no longer are people making Horizon Worlds with basic shapes, like a 3-year-old with some blocks in VR. They're making it with importing 3D tri-mesh models into a PC tool and using TypeScript to connect everything up and et cetera, et cetera. And there's NPCs now. So yeah, well, I mean,
have you played with it yet?
The desktop editor, yeah, I've played with it a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't played with it yet. I haven't had time, but yeah, I feel like it might be fun to try to import a bunch of stuff and see if see what its load can handle. What can it take? What can I throw at it before it breaks? That's mostly what I want to know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the first public release, right? I expect that this is going to dramatically change over time. It's probably going to be their biggest investment this year, right? What does this look like a year from now? What does it look like 2 years from now? What does it look like 3 years from now? And, we've also talked about like some of the generative AI stuff. I understand some people are kind of repulsed by that, but for others, the ability to type in exactly what 3D model you want and have it just appear, that changes a lot, right? When you can build an entire world by typing, and then eventually you get voice for that and do it in real time, you get a holodeck, right? So we'll have to see.
Guy is saying that this can handle 500,000 polygons?
I'm not sure.
Or no, he's telling me to try to dump. Okay.
He may be challenging you to try it.
Oh, man. I've got a 3D scan of myself from 2018. I'm just going to dump it in Horizon Worlds and just, that's it. No interaction, just a big model of me spinning around.
Yeah, Geek has clarified that is a challenge. So Andrew Tech has said that they are building something in Horizon Worlds at the moment. So please keep us updated. in the comments or comments below. We would love to hear if anyone on this show is using this Horizon desktop editor to try and build a virtual world or a game or whatever. Let us know. We would love to know how this is working for you. UploadVR's Don Hopper is working on it. And this is, yes, Crispy, this is not Don, this is Gray Kyle. It's a whole...
I prefer Kyle the Gray. So that way, when I come back next time, in the sequel, I can be Kyle the White, maybe. I don't know. Yes, I am not. Lord Don gets that. I assure you, I am not a Don. Call back to earlier. So, okay, I know our timer obviously stops after 2 hours, so we've been on for at least 2 hours, David.
Yeah, we've got topic.
This perfect little cap to go on the end. Take us into Samsung's headset news.
Sure. So if you've been living under a virtual rock for the past few months, you wouldn't know that Samsung plans to launch a headset later this year, a standalone high-end headset that will essentially be a Vision Pro, but for people in the Google Android system instead of the Apple ecosystem. And this headset is going to introduce Android XR, which is Google's Android-based XR operating system that's going to be a competitor to Meta's Horizon OS. So once this arrives, we'll have kind of three big tech players in this. We'll have Apple with its Vision headsets and Vision OS, Meta with its Quest headsets and Horizon OS, and then Samsung Google with the Samsung headset and Android XR. But of course, in both Meta and Google's case, they hope that a bunch of other companies are going to adopt these headsets too. So this is obviously an interesting development, but until now, we haven't really known much about the hardware of Samsung's headset. And here's an image of it in the real world, someone actually wearing it, not just a render. Samsung did say that it would use state-of-the-art displays, but it hasn't said what exactly those displays are or resolution or anything like that. All we really know is that Qualcomm last year said that it will use the XR2 Plus Gen 2 chipset. We know it has eye tracking. We know it has an external battery. We know it has an open periphery design that's kind of like a Halo strap kind of thing. And we know it obviously has hand tracking and environment sensing and things like that. Now we have a report from South Korean news outlet The Elec, and they report that Samsung will use Sony's new 1.3-inch 4K Micro-OLED display, the same one being used in Sony's standalone headset, which you may have seen, right? Sony is launching that high-end Android XR, or maybe just regular Android, we don't know, headset for creatives and professionals. With Siemens, they've partnered to launch it for CAD and industrial modeling and things like that. So that same panel is now going to be used. Let me bring up a little chart that we have in our article that should make what I'm saying a little bit more clear. So I said this in my Vision Pro review. 4K micro OLED displays are incredible, and they are the obvious ideal display for headsets. If they were affordable, every headset would use them. Unfortunately, they are extremely expensive to the point that two of these puppies costs more than your entire Quest 3. That's how expensive these things are. These are ridiculously expensive, but ridiculously good looking. When you look into a headset, and I've tried a bunch of these, when you look into a headset with 4K micro OLED displays, it doesn't look like you're looking at a screen, right? I'm in a Quest 3S right now. There's kind of these like LCD scan lines, and I can see that there's a resolution limit. Like, I'm not saying that these are retinal, right? They're not retinal. You get to like 40 pixels per degree or something like that, 35, depending on the field of view, 35, 40, and human vision is 60. But it's good enough, and the micro OLED pixels are big enough compared to each other, as in the fill factor is so big, there's no gaps anymore, that it doesn't look like you're looking at a screen. And that's incredible, and it's beautiful, and you get the true blacks, and you get the real extreme contrast, the infinite contrast, punchy colors, none of the Mura of PlayStation VR 2. This is the ideal display type. So yeah, so Samsung's headset using this means it should have the same kind of visual advantages as something like Apple Vision Pro. But it looks like they will actually use Sony's new micro OLED that's slightly improved over the one in Vision Pro. So you can see on this chart, the one in Vision Pro actually has a higher horizontal resolution ever so slightly, but it has a very kind of a lower vertical resolution. So the Vision Pro's is 3660 by 3200, and Sony's new micro OLED is 3552 by 3840. So this is significant because it actually will allow Samsung's headset, if the lenses are designed in the right way, to not have what I consider to be the Achilles heel of Vision Pro. Well, an Achilles heel. Maybe not that far, but a big disadvantage of Vision Pro, which is that it has a very vertically narrow field of view. The horizontal field of view is fine in Vision Pro, but vertically it is really narrow. It's a solid like 10 or 15 degrees lower than what you get in a Quest headset. And it really is noticeable, and it's not. So by having this kind of more square panel, still not anything close to square, but closer to square, they should be able to have a good vertical field of view, as well as obviously just, there are more pixels here. Brightness wise, it's the same. You're talking about 1,000 nits of raw brightness at 20% persistence. Note that in reality, what you see through the lenses is a lot less bright, because the disadvantage of pancake lenses are amazing and we all love them because they give us a sharp and clear image all over the display. And they also obviously give you slimmer headsets that don't have this huge gap of the optical path of Fresnel lens and aspheric headsets. The disadvantage of pancake lenses is that they kill the majority of the brightness from the display. So in reality, you actually see about 100 nits to your eye in both headsets. The other advantage of Sony's new micro OLED, other than the slightly higher resolution, is the color gamut is slightly wider, right? So Apple Vision Pro is 92% DCI-P3. Sony's new micro OLED is 96%. A disadvantage potentially is that while Apple's headset can go to 100 hertz using Sony's original 4K micro OLED, Sony's new micro OLED has only been publicly stated to go to 90 hertz. It's possible it can go more than this, but they have not. There's no indication that that's the case. So viewers will be able to see a chart that's explaining all this. If you're listening to the podcast, I would really recommend going to uploadvr.com and searching Samsung, as this chart is in the article. But you can see that Samsung's headset will use the same panel as Sony's headset, and it's very, very similar to the BOE micro OLED panel that is going into Play for Dream, Megane X Superlight, Immersed Visor, and you'll notice that Pimax Dream Air is in two columns here, and the reason is that they're actually choosing between these two panels at the moment, despite claiming that they're going to ship in May. They are still at the point of choosing panels, so that tells you a lot about Pimax Dream Air's real development stage.
Guy is saying it's surprising to me that we are 1 year after the Vision Pro launch and we are still on basically the same screens. They are becoming cheaper, at least. So we all know that, well, maybe we don't all know. Abrash said that 16K is where we need to be for true human, he said that in I don't know, however long ago that was.
Yeah, so at full field of view. So these headsets are like 100 degrees horizontal. He's saying if you had like a 200 degree horizontal, you would need 16K. So by his kind of equivalent, you would need 8K per eye to have retinal. But again, what you notice once you use these headsets is that these are good enough, right? Like they are good enough that you're in a Vision Pro or you're in one of these headsets. I've tried most of these. I think I've tried all of these except for Dream Air. And I haven't tried Sony's either, but I've tried most of these. The resolution is incredible. 4K per eye micro OLED. We're not at the point where you're I don't think anyone's going to look at these displays and be like, I want better. But I do think what they want is cheaper, right? The big problem is that, again, these displays at the very least cost your entire Quest 3 just for the displays, more than your entire Quest 3. We don't know the price of these two quite yet. We know that it's likely less than this. So over time, we're seeing a reduction of price. It's still not significantly reduced, but that is going to be the primary focus of these display companies, particularly BOE. It really wants to scale this up and make this something that one day every headset can use. And one day every headset will, right? There will be a paradise future where you go into your $500 headset and uses micro OLED. When that day will be, it could be the mid 2030s is the problem. But it may, it's going to creep down over time, right? So you're going to get $1,000 standalone headsets that use this. Play for Dream is $2,000, for example. Meganic Superlight is a PC headset, so it doesn't have any of the standalone stuff, and it's something like just under 2,000. Immersed claims their visor is going to be around 1,000, but that's a big kind of area of skepticism. Pimax Dream Air, PC only $2,000. Sony's is like 4,000 and something dollars. We don't know what Samsung's headset's going to be price-wise. But I think a lot of people who today buy a $500 LCD Quest 3 would maybe buy a $1,000 Micro-OLED headset because it's so much better.
Maybe. It's a toughie. This Sony headset, is this the one that I tried at CES?
Yes,
okay, right. So yeah, that had a pretty good. Those are pretty good. Had a decent view. I mean, the thing is you get to the point where it's incrementing so small. I have such terrible eyesight, and I think I saw somebody in the comments say it as well. This is good enough already to maybe a majority of people in the industry. Maybe is that over exaggerating?
No, I don't think anyone's going to use any of these displays and think, "Oh God, that was horribly cursed. What just happened to you there?"
What happened? Whoa!
Yeah, your arm
I'm like
started
glitching. I'm
extending
glitching.
outwards there. I think we may be losing Kyle, and maybe your headset running out of battery, perhaps.
No, it says 20%. All right, wait, I'm good now.
Yeah, you seem to be. Yeah, you seem to be good. Yeah, no, as Mastoras in the comments points out, the lenses are more the limitation, right? So I don't know what the Sony headset's lenses are. I haven't tried it, but it may be that their lenses aren't great. It also may be software limited, right? You might have been using the Sony headset on PC, and it might have been streaming at a much lower resolution than what the displays can handle. So you don't know like what's the main limitation there. I mean, Guy Godin is obviously ironically, as a developer of virtual desktop, is a skeptic of headsets replacing monitors in any sense. And he's saying, it's not good enough for him as a monitor replacement, but it is close with those 4K micro OLEDs. For some people, it is, right? Brad Lynch in the industry famously got rid of all of his monitors and uses Vision Pro as one. I think, like, given the fact you can make it bigger as well, but still keep it within your field of view, Vision Pro's resolution is good enough for me. It feels like a 1440p monitor. If you're used to a real 4K monitor, though, you're not going to get there. But again, I think it's far more important to get this to be affordable than to get the high end, go even more high end. There are companies working on even higher end micro OLEDs. We actually reported on this last year. LG is working on a 4K micro OLED display that does something incredible. It has a much higher brightness, which means, this is kind of complicated, that it can get rid of the motion blur in Vision Pro. So this idea of persistence, this is a tangent that I hoped we wouldn't have to go down, but we'll kind of have to go down. The higher the persistence, the more motion blur you get. But the lower the persistence, the less brightness you get. Persistence refers to for what percentage of each frame is the display on. If you're not familiar with the kind of core tech of VR, you may be surprised to know that for the majority of the time, your headset's display isn't on, even when you're using it. That may sound weird to you, but or at least the backlight isn't on if you're in an LCD display. It actually only flashes, and say your LCD display, I'll use it as an example, the backlight only flashes for about 10%, 20% of the frame. The rest of the time it's dark. Your eye doesn't see that though, because it's happening 90 times per second or 72 or whatever. But the result is that actually means that it looks like there's less motion blur, because if it stayed on the whole time, then as you're panning your head, right, for each frame, you're seeing the same image. So your head thinks that it's seeing the same light even as it's moving, right? Which is smear, right? You're seeing the same movement smear. So all of these headsets, and this has been happening for like 10 years since Oculus DK2, this is just how they work. They trick your brain by flashing the image for only a short time of each frame. And then your brain goes, oh, I'm seeing light in each frame that's in a different place as I move my head, corresponding to my head. Therefore, it's all one smooth image. But again, if you were to run like 1,000 hertz camera on your headset, you'd be like, wow, this is dark most of the time. the crazy if you aren't familiar with this, but this is how it works. So the point is, these micro OLEDs need to get brighter to be able to do this for less enough time to provide good enough brightness while also having not enough smear. That's why you get Motion Blur and Vision Pro. And so LG is actually working on a next generation micro OLED that solves that, goes even wider color gamut. You saw that chart before. It goes to 97%. I think it's even like higher resolution as well. I think it's like 3800 on both axes as well. Probably won't be ready for products this year, but who knows about 2026.
I feel like, David, you could do an entire show just on the physics, the science of how this technology works. I remember when all of this first started happening, and persistence and different levels of warping and all, and having to understand and learn all this in the very, very beginning. There is a lot of science that happens here that people I don't think understand or comprehend. I'm sure some of you veterans out there, you get it, and you've been kind of immersed in it, pun intended. But yeah, I mean, the newer screens, I see this stuff whenever I go to the trade shows. They always have these displays, all these little blocks and all these screens, and you put your eyes up to them and you look at them and wow, that looks great. But how long before it becomes practically applied to a headset? And then by the time they get that incorporated, the next big thing is right behind it at the next booth. And so the iterative wonders that make this technology interesting and keeps us in business, because we got new stuff to report on all the time. You know, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I did see one person here in the chat wanted to know who I was. I'm the new guy. Just ignore me. If you don't know who I am, you're not missing much.
He's not the new guy.
I'm the new guy.
Yeah, the new guy. That's wow. So yeah, what you say about the path being really long is actually so true. Sony was first showing this display at trade shows in 2019.
Yeah,
that's crazy. BOE was showing this in 2021 privately at trade shows. Yeah, so like there is a very long path to getting this. People were talking about putting micro OLED displays behind pancake lenses in like 2017. UploadVR was reporting about the idea of being like, this would allow for a lot slimmer headsets. Like, look at what this, look, here's micro OLED, here's pancake, put them together, slimmer headsets. We were reporting about that 8 years ago. But it takes a long time for these new technologies to filter down into the consumer products. A lot of what you see in like smartphones is just iteration of the same thing. Over, something gets better, slightly better, but going from 0 to 1, introducing like an entirely new thing. The micro OLED supply chain didn't exist essentially until this. It was used in like some military products and in like viewfinders for certain cameras, but even then, these were not 4K. These were like 1080p at best. They weren't like great in many kind of aspects. Coming up with this like micro OLED supply chain, that was a 0 to 1 thing, and it's very, very expensive, and that's why they're very expensive now. And the yield still sucks. They still don't really know how to make them without a bunch of them being broken. So we'll figure it out.
It's funny to think about how the technology has changed so much. I mean, if you go back to pre Oculus DK1, ooh, I just went spastic here. Hold on, my headset's going nuts again. What happened? Am I still here?
You're still here. You're just a little bit kind of glitchy, I guess.
Okay, so I'll just keep talking. So there was a headset that I tried well before DK1, and what the hell happened? Am I still here?
Do you want to maybe rejoin?
Yeah, let me.
Yeah, it might be a good idea.
Whoa, I'm locked.
Maybe turn the headset off and on again.
You know what? If you can still hear me, I'm going to keep talking.
Sure, go for it.
So WorldViz was a headset manufacturer that sold a headset that worked. I tried it well before DK1. It was 10 grand easily, big expensive monster that I put on my head, and it worked. But yeah, that other than that headset, who else was using these little screens? So like, I know that there were other headsets out there, like you said, military applications, but this entire industry exists today because of the Oculus DK1. Like, is that safe to say?
Well, like the VR industry exists because of the
Well, I
micro.
mean, the VR industry existed in a very,
Sorry,
very
consumer
tiny.
VR. Oh, I think we finally lost Kyle there. He's obviously going to be restarting his headset. To be clear, Kyle is not new. Kyle is our operations manager, has been for many, many years now. His avatar just isn't loading today for the same reason Don's isn't. Um, and yeah, Kyle's been around in this industry for a lot longer than you probably think. He's been around for like more than 10 years in this industry. He's flashing in and out of existence right now. This is horribly cursed. I'm scarred by what I'm seeing, but I'm sure he will figure out how to reconnect. George Jorgensen saying that their first headset was 320 by 200, as in 0.3K resolution, and played Descent on it. That is very impressive. D1360 points out we have 20 days to upgrade meta avatars. We are very, very aware, and we would love to make time, and we very much hopefully will make time. But I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of VR news out recently. If you go to uploadvr.com, I mean, we're really putting out a lot of articles, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're putting out website upgrades too, like stuff you may notice, may not notice. It kind of just gets better over time. Yeah, so I'm just going to read some more comments while we wait for Kyle to come back. But yeah, I mean, the 4K micro OLED industry exists because Apple birthed it for Vision Pro. Like Vision Pro is turning out to be like the first headset to ship with these micro OLED displays at this density for like 2 years. Apple put a bunch of money into making it happen. People talk about how Meta has spent $100 billion on Reality Labs. The best estimates are that Apple has spent around 20 to 30 billion on Vision Pro alone, right? So that's a third of what Meta spent on the entire of Reality Labs for 10 years. Apple spent on Vision Pro. Vision Pro is a marvel of engineering and required a lot of 0 to 1s. It required, like, Apple put a lot of money into making Vision Pro. It is not some side project. It is very much so one of their core pillars for the future. And you'll see that more clearly as the future Vision headsets come out as well. And now, yeah, we're finally seeing this happen too, right? Sony's using that same R&D and bringing it to other headsets. BOE is doing the classic China thing of doing it cheaper and, trying to scale it up and get the manufacturing of it sorted. And I should also say that, the first headset to really bring micro OLED at all, it was 2.5K in a consumer sense, was Big Screen Beyond, right? It had those 2.5K micro OLED panels from Sia. That's another Chinese company that's actually working on trying to get 4K micro OLEDs working as well. So Big Screen Beyond kind of got it for 2.5K, but for this density, it was Apple that birthed this into existence.
I came back. I'm not sure how that happened, but I was able to come back.
You're back. Yeah, he seems to be smooth now.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like there's just a memory leak in the studio. I'm going to have to look around, see if I can find the leak.
I mean, well, why am I not on? I don't know. Who knows?
I don't know. You're special.
It could be.
I don't know.
It could be. I mean, we haven't. This build is old now. This is
Hey, maybe we should take the entire thing and import it into Horizon Worlds. No, David's like, no, I'm gonna strangle you through VR.
I would actually like to see you try. I would really like to see the result. Please.
You know what? You send me the project file. Dump it into something, and I'll see what I can do. Guy is on board. Guy said he's going to help me get Virtual Studio. Guy, I'm on my way up to Canada right now. We're gonna
feel like maybe a slight misquote of. Thank you to Parmesan for the $10 donation. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. It keeps us. We rely on our members. We rely on donations. Thank you so much to all of our members who do support us. We're a tiny company covering a fast moving industry that moves faster and faster every month. It's like the stream of stuff is getting faster and faster every month, but we're the same, size of people. So thank you for helping us bring in freelancers in many cases to help us. That's one of the practical examples of like, what does your money do? It helps us. For example, this is just one example, but contract freelancers to cover certain news articles that then we can focus our efforts onto more. And then you get more coverage from us in total. And I can, focus on the website and now the studio as well. So thank you for that donation.
Quentin M here, member for 29 months. That's awesome. This finally did an AVP demo. I'm assuming you're not talking about Alien versus Predator, that you're talking about Apple Vision Pro. My wife, who is no fan of VR, said during the demo, I finally get it. Not for $3,000, but watching Avatar and AVP is next level. I will say this, that the Vision Pro is a fun demo for people who are not into it the same way some of us are. So yeah, so take your husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends and significant others and moms and dads and grandmas and aunts and uncles and put a VR headset on them. See what they do. Be curious.
Lots of positive comments from people here. Really, really appreciate your words. We're trying really hard. This is passion stuff. We all of our team end up working weekends. We work late nights. Henry, for example, is off this week, but he was literally packing his suitcase this morning in one hand and jousting with his laptop on the other hand to try and get on top of that Toast Interactive Max News. And I was obviously helping him as well, and taking that off his usually he covers the game stuff, but I was obviously helping him. That's passion. Your suitcase in one hand to go on your vacation and your laptop in the other to keep doing your work to the very last second. And that's the kind of work we do here.
The level of dedication that we have to this industry, our passion drives us. It's definitely true. I am pretty convinced that David Heaney does not sleep. You're 5 hours ahead of me in the world, in the future. And there are times where it's late for me and you are on making posts and stuff. So the dedication, it's true. The team is like, we live and breathe this stuff. It's in our veins. Not OpenXR though, because that'll just complicate everything. not that in our veins.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, we'll say it once, we'll say it again. We really, really appreciate the passion of our audience. It's great to come on and have a conversation like this in the, at the near the end of our week, where we get to dive deep. We get to hear from you, your comments, your opinions, your questions, and then obviously we make time for this, even when we really shouldn't. We make time for this every week now. I think we're pretty good at broadcasting at the same time. And obviously the same thing for the Gamescast on Tuesday. If you're interested in VR games, if some of this stuff makes you go, I don't care, where are the games? Tuesday, go to uploadvr.com and click on the little podcast button at the top, and you can see the Gamescast, our other podcast. So yeah, and I think sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna point out too. We have a wonderful way of supporting us and our ventures here in this industry by going and subscribing to the site. If you are a free subscriber, you get to make comments and join the community discussion. It's very important. If you are a contributing paying member, you get our site with no ads, which is awesome. Definitely recommend that. And then obviously we have the patronage as well. If you just are a super duper fan, which some of you are, and we appreciate that. We do this for you. We do this because of you. We are able to do this because of you. So that's all very important. So go check out our stuff, uploadvr.com. Check out our YouTube channel and socials and all of that fun stuff. David, any last words?
No, I think you kind of summed it up there. I like George Jorgensen's joke in the comments of remake the studio and Horizon Worlds to claim the developer cash, that they're their 50 million developer fund.
Yeah, we can sell in-app purchases. We can sell Grey Dawn skins for everybody that can join the Grey Dawn team, the Grey Dawn squad. Let's call them that. All right, everyone. I guess that about wraps it up for this week. Stay tuned for stuff next week and continuing on in the future. We will see. It's been so long. I said it wrong. We'll see you in the future.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks again.
I'm rusty. I gotta do some more